We be live. How's everyone? We're going to be reviewing the debate between an atheist and a Muslim, an ex-Muslim atheist and a Muslim. Don't worry if you haven't watched the previous episodes of this review. I'm going to try to make this episode for itself to stand on its own, to make sense. This is the debate. We were at the one. Let me know if you have audio. Let me know. Get the popcorn ready. Let me just play a little bit of this video for you guys to let me know. Thank you for telling me the audio is good, but let me know if you have audio from the show as well. Oh wait, I don't even have audio. I think I need to unmute the tab. There we go.
Recognizes.
Did you just hear that? Let me know. Did you just hear Daniel? Okay, so this guy is a Muslim for people who don't know, and this guy is the atheist, ex-Muslim atheist. All right. Yes, you have great. Thank you to Music Guy and Susanna. All right. I think we left it at 1 hour 22 minutes. Let me put the speed at 1.25. You guys can keep up, right? Come on, guys. You can do that. 1.25 is not that hard. All right, let's start.
In terms of size, strength, and status. And all women, including the hardcore feminists,
prefer
the higher status men.
We already addressed this. It's not all women, it's most women. Do not talk about in absolutes. Do not assume just because the majority are in a way that everybody is that way. Again, we already addressed this. I shouldn't be addressing this. Move on.
So if you promote egalitarian marriage, such as in human rights, you basically are ensuring less attraction, and that means less stable marriages. And this is exactly why marriages in the modern West have
the most stable marriages, if more, not just marriages, but long-term relationships, if you want to get, if you let everybody just decide what they like instead of you mandating it to them, okay? So yeah, if majority of women like certain type of men, they get to go for that type of men, and those other women who don't like that, they get to go with some other type of men, okay? Just let people do what they want. Just let them live the way they want. Don't mandate what societies need to be like, how relationships need to be like, just because the majority are like that. Well, if the majority is like that, let the majority decide that way, and the minority who doesn't like that, go pick something else.
Collapsed because they're egalitarian. Islam says, no, if you want a strong society, you have to have strong families. And if
this is easy, guys, just give people the choices as long as they're not hurting each other. Just give people the choice. How hard is that? It's easy.
If you want strong families, they have to be patriarchal. And if they're patriarchal, that means the man
we already addressed this.
And if
move.
That means he has the power to physically maintain order. This is all a coherent, holistic system, and it's backed and underwritten by human biology, human psychology, that is universal across all human societies. It's hardwired into us. That's why this is an objective argument, Harris. You can't really understand that. I hope your followers, these Christians who are listening, these Hindus that are listening, I hope they're following, because this stuff is in their books as well, in their cultures as well.
True. That's why they all suck.
They've reformed all that and threw it out because they're cucking to modernity, but Muslims are not
cucking to modernity. You will all cuck to modernity. You will bend the knee to modernity. Daniel, you think you're the resistance. We will break the resistance. You will all submit. You think you submit to Allah? You will submit to modernity.
Going to do that. We don't need to change our religion because it's revealed from God, to the creator of human beings. The creator of human beings knows our psychology, knows our biology, and that's why he has revealed this Sharia for the benefit and flourishing of humanity. And all of the statistics are proving this. You can't even respond to a single one.
Go ahead, Harris, for 5 minutes.
Even if, by the way, let me tell you how powerful we are, the people on the side of modernity. We're just responding to you for entertainment. We're so powerful, our army is so strong, that you could be like making all these arguments, but eventually you will all submit to modernity. This is just fun for us. Eventually, the entire Islamic world, the Christian world, the Hindu world, you will all submit to modernity. Okay? We don't even need to make these arguments. It's just the way of things. It's the natural order of things.
Minutes.
Susanna, that sounds very ominous. I'm trying to be ominous.
All
Right. Okay. So let's just go through some of his points. He says, so would I want women to subject to law? Of course, I would want them to subject to law. If they commit crime, they need to go to prison. But then you extended it. Now this is.
Okay, Daniel. Shh. He's talking now. This is not proper.
No, sorry. Please don't interrupt. I mean,
that's a very bad look, by the way. I must say, I have this. I make this mistake as well. Like the guy just listened to you for like 5 minutes, and he didn't interrupt, and now you're just like, you can't let him speak for like 10 seconds. It's a bad look, and I sometimes do that, and I should practice not doing that.
Yes, painful as it was listening to you babble, but then I kept my patience there.
Also, the people who talk about like alpha male, beta male, like, oh, me strong, me alpha, like people's like on Daniel's side. Let me tell you, Daniel, that's not a good look. Like, if you want to look more alpha, pick up the glass and drink from it directly rather than sucking on a straw. That's like, this is again, I don't believe in these things, but the people who believe in these things, they will tell you that do not suck on a straw on a show like this. Maybe like pick up a glass or have a mug or something.
So, but you said you extended your 7th century mentality or your backward mentality, saying that so that means they would be subject to beatings and tortured and even sentenced to death. Hello, have you even heard what we're talking about human rights? Us human rights activists, we don't support sentence to death. We don't support torture, like the torture of Kinana and those men that Prophet Muhammad said that go and drink camel urine. Like, we don't support that beating. We don't
see. Like, this is what Harris doesn't understand. Harris just like doesn't know that his audience has no idea what you're talking about, right? Like, we know that the people, those people that Muhammad said to go drink camel urine. We know that story eventually led to Muhammad what did he do? Gouge their eyes out and then let them in the desert to die from thirst, right? So that was a torture story in Islamic hadith, right? And he just like, oh, those guys that drink camel urine. Like, people don't know the story, Harris. People don't know that what you're talking about. Somebody's going to think like you're saying that Muhammad telling somebody to go drink camel urine, that by itself is like torture, right? Like, you have this, what is this called? It's called the curse of knowledge, that you just assume that the things that you know, the audience also knows. They can't just be like, oh, like those people, like what are you talking about? You're talking about torture. Now you're all of a sudden talking about Muhammad telling other people to go drink camel urine. Like, how did that transition just happen? Like, just because you know the story, you can't just make that assumption that other people know.
Support that. So there is imprisonment.
Wait.
Which is within reason. Yes, it's not ideal, but
yeah, exactly. Muhammad put hot nails. I mean, I don't think he did it himself. He told other people to put hot nails. So the story is that I think these people came to Muhammad, and they were like, they had an issue. They had some sort of a sickness, and Muhammad told them to go drink camel urine and something else. Camel milking. I forgot something, and camel urine. And then I think they were cured, and then they went off and they stole some sheep. And Muhammad was like, oh, those bloody bastards, I just helped them with helping them, telling them to go drink camel urine. And now they stole some sheep. I don't know, maybe the story is like, the details are exactly like this. And then like they captured them, and then he put hot rods into their eyes and then left them blinded in the desert to die from thirst. Okay, so that's pretty cruel and unusual punishment, right? Oh yeah, milk and urine. See, I'm remembering this correctly. This was been a while. They didn't just kill the sheep. They also killed the shepherd. Okay. Yeah, I mean, still, those are some bad dudes. But again, that seems like a very cruel way to punish them, right?
This is within reason, but at least we don't support torture. Yes, I know that if I beat a donkey, the donkey would probably be tamed. And this is the same mentality that you guys applied on human beings. A powerful person applies a force to scare them, intimidate them, and gets them under the thumb. Yes, we know that. It does work. It does work. But should it work? Because now we're not thinking about the powerful, we're thinking about the weak. This is why we're saying no, women should not be beaten. Now you say, okay, so who would you rather have them? So I've already said that we wouldn't be beating torture, sentenced to death, to subject to law, meaning humane laws such as imprisonment, with a full chance of parole and rehabilitation, and not to seek vengeance. Only, so who would you want them to punish by? Well, the state or someone who loves them. I almost, I had to mute my mic when you said that, who loves them. Like a husband loves you, baby, I love you, but you know, left your clothes outside and it rained again. Boom. That's what you mean love.
Okay, come on. We don't have to. This is a strum. Okay, guys, Islam is already horrible. You don't need to make it even more ridiculous than it is to be able to tackle what these people are saying and to address it. Okay, like that's obviously not what they're saying. They're not like, oh, honey, you left the clothes outside and the rain made it. Well, we were supposed to dry it and now it's raining and they're wet. Boom. Like, I mean, obviously that's not what we're dealing here. Like, it's not what people like Daniel are saying is that it's not that like, oh, every time, like, it's just like constant physical punishment on your wife constantly over even the slightest little things. That's not what they're saying. It's already bad, guys. They're already accepting, promoting wife beating. Okay, this is already horrible. You don't need to present a more ridiculous version of it, because now you're going to look ridiculous. Now you're going to look like you're misrepresenting what they're saying. That's not, when something is already so bad that it's easy for us to attack, why do you have to put yourself in a position that now you have to be in a defensive position by misrepresenting what they're actually saying? That's obviously not how. Yeah.
Love. This is what you're saying. No, Daniel. As I said, this is not in accordance with our worldview of human rights. You said, what was the pathetic analogy that you gave? That was about what you can beat the employees. Okay, again, see, you have to work on your analogies as well, because you said beat the employees, and I was thinking.
Also, I guess again, I'm not endorsing any of this. What the Muslim side is saying, that you think, the idea that the physical punishment is possible doesn't mean that the physical punishment will be used. Just the fact that is there as something that is possible. Again, I'm not saying this, okay? I'm just trying to understand that introduce a certain stability within a family that you might consider it to be cruel, but what you don't understand is that a loving husband, the position of authority it has in a family, the stability that causes, that is the best thing for women. A woman will enjoy that stable, that stability that all of that introduces. Like that's what, maybe she recognizes that, maybe she doesn't. But women are happier in a stability that these kind of this alpha male in control, potentially wife beating husband. Okay, again, those are not the same thing. I'm not saying that's the same thing, but that kind of attitude creates an environment for a wife that if a husband truly loved his wife, that would be the stability that he would introduce to a family structure. And even if a woman doesn't understand that this is the best situation overall, she will be living in a more stable, in an environment where she will end up being more happy. Okay, and the proof they have for that is like, look, if you, without having that, okay, so a woman might be like, oh, this is cruel, why would you promote wife beating and stuff like that? But then they argue, okay, but without that structure, that stability, look how happy women are right now in single family household or broken families and stuff like that. Again, that's all ridiculous, because we'll get to it, because one does not cause the other one, right? We don't believe that you being able to beat your wife produces stability and a healthy relationship. But that is the argument. That's what you need to respond to. You can't just be like responding to, that is what you need to address.
What? Which corporations are beating their employees? But then you were using that as.
Oh, okay. So here's Harris. Again, I think Harris just didn't understand what Daniel is saying here. Okay. Again, guys, I'm not saying what Daniel is saying is correct, but I think Harris just didn't understand. But listen to this.
Worldview of human rights. You said, what was the pathetic analogy that you gave? That was about what you can beat the employees. Okay, again, see, you have to work on your analogies as well, because you said beat the employees, and I was thinking, what? Which corporations are beating their employees? But then you were using that as a synonym for firing them.
No, he wasn't using it as a synonym for firing them, Harris. This is something you don't understand. His analogy. So he said, like, in the corporate environment at your job, employers get to beat their employees. And Harris was like, "What are you talking about? Employers don't just get to beat their employees." But what Daniel was suggesting was that that's a perfect analogy because there's no beating done, but you have an understanding that, for example, if your employer wants to fire you and then you want to cause a scene and maybe and tell people that you're not going to leave, you know the fact that he was going to call the security, and security is going to put their hand on you, and they're going to physically move you out of the office, right? Out of the working environment. And the fact that that is a possible, everybody just on the back of the mind know that you can't just do sorts of things at the office or at the working environment, means that security doesn't get called. That you won't behave in that way. Everybody just understands that, like, if you go crazy or if you do something insane, there's security, like, and you're going to make a scene, and it's going to be embarrassing, and you're going to experience some sort of physical violence, right? So last time we addressed this, there's many differences. The reason, so Harris doesn't even understand like what Daniel is saying. Harris thinks that he's just using firing as a synonym for violence, but that's not why Daniel is wrong. The reason why Daniel is wrong is because his analogy is not correct. It's a false analogy. One, because physically removing somebody from your private environment that you have authority over, and they don't, if they don't leave, that is some form of physical violence. However, it's not beating. Okay, like when security comes, they could get you, they could move you around, they could physically force you out of the environment. But if they start beating you with a club or something, that is not what a security has the authority to do. At least in most civilized places, right? And the only way they could physically start hurting you is if you're physically hurting them and they're trying to defend themselves, right? So even in this analogy that Daniel is giving, that's not the physical violence that is the Quran allows, which is beating the wife. His analogy doesn't work. Okay. Also, the physical violence that we allow for an employer or anybody in authority in a work environment is not because of disobedience, is because of you violating, like, you are violating a rule, a law. You have officially have been told that you do not get to be in these grounds, for example, and then you are staying in someone else's private property and you have no right to be, and they get to remove you, and you refuse to, and they get to remove you. Okay. But the Islamic version of that with the wife is just with the mere fear of disobedience, you are mandated to beat them. Okay. So if Daniel wanted to give if Daniel's analogy was more, it's closer to what Islam teaches, it would be as if the employers get beaten every time they don't listen to their employer, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I just got fired and my boss is telling me to leave this environment and I would refuse to say so. I'm just going to sit here, and they call security and they remove me. No, that is not the proper analogy. The analogy would be like, my boss asked me to file this report. I don't want to do it. He told me to do it today. I want to do it tomorrow. Okay, there's going to be employee beating because you disobeyed the boss. Okay, that would be that, and obviously would be that is ridiculous. Okay, what we allow an employer to do, okay, we would allow a husband do that as well. If, for example, the husband and wife were separated and the house was owned by the husband, okay, and the wife had packed up and left, and now one day the husband comes back from work and he's in his living room, and the wife is just like, she had a spare key and she's sitting there, and he's like, what are you doing here? We're separated. Get out of my house. And she was like, I refuse to leave. And then he gets to call, I don't know, police or security to physically remove her from her house. That we allow. That we think like, yeah, that's allowed. You can do that. She's not supposed to be here. This is your house. You could remove her. We allow that for the husband. We would allow for the wife if the situation was the opposite. That is, in our worldview, we allow that for the husband, we allow that for the wife, and we allow that for the employer. So these things are, these examples that Daniel is using, they're not analogous. We do allow some form of physical violence. The physical violence that we allow is you calling the cops for them to come and physically remove the person that is in your private property out if they're not leaving while you're asking them. Does that make sense, guys? Do you see how that analogy makes more sense than Daniel's analogy? Let me know if that makes sense.
There's a huge difference between firing someone and physically beating them. Yes.
Again, this is Harris not understanding what Daniel is saying. Like, yes, he's not saying firing somebody is physically beating them.
Yes, if you drag someone again, that is a different action. It's not equivalent of beating. It's like, what is worse, coughing, pushing, shoving, or actually cutting off someone's hand or a full-on fist in someone's face. These things are very simple to understand, but you can't understand that because you can't get your mind.
Guys, you're not letting me know. Did that explanation make sense? Did it make sense why Daniel's analogy doesn't make sense? Does it? Okay, good. Music guy saying it.
Out of the 7th century ideology. There were a few other points that you made earlier, but I think we will probably open it up for back-to-back conversation. I think that will make it more interesting viewing for everyone.
You got it. We got one more 5-minute response. That's from Daniel, and then we'll go right into that open dialogue.
Wait, do I get more time because he had the 20-minute opening?
So it is true that you would get, given that Harris started and yield. Well, actually, what?
Oh yeah. So yeah, the best analogy, if Daniel wanted to compare this to an employee, because his argument is like we already allow that for employers, so we should allow that for husbands, because he's like we already accept violence, right? But again, this is a good comeback by Salex TC. He's saying like the analogous situation would have been if the employee is beaten by the employer, if the employer just assumes, not even if the employee is disobeying, because the Quranic verse is that the husband should beat the wife if he fears disobedience, right? So if Daniel is like, oh, we already allow employers to do that to the employees, because if we fire somebody, they get to call security. Again, no, the situation. So you're right, Salex. Even the example I gave is not analogous. The analogous situation would be if we allowed employers to beat their employees, even not if they have disobeyed the employer, but only if the employer just fears disobedience for the employee, and then the employer gets to beat them. Not when they're fired, not physically removing them from the environment, not that type of violence, beating them if they fear disobedience. Fear disobedience, not actual disobedience. I mean, all of us, everybody sane would consider that to be insane. Like, what? No, we don't accept that. So we should be using this argument against Daniel, and other people are like, okay, guys, given that this would be insane with an employer and employee relationship, how do you not see how insane that would be for a husband and wife relationship?
One thing is,
if you want to use the employer and employee as a defense, that is.
He didn't take the full 20 minutes. He took 60.
Yeah, I didn't.
So you would get an extra minute. So what we can do, so if you go back, the recording of his opening statement.
Right. So Alex is saying, and if the employee refuse, no, it's the other way around. If the employee refuses to sleep with the employer, yes, it would be cursed by angels.
If people really want to check, because I am keeping the time on every statement.
James, that's okay. James, that's
hold on
okay.
a second, I'm still talking. Hold on a second, I'm still talking. Hold on.
Okay, guys, again, this is something you have to be careful. The moderator is already doing a very hard job. It's like hard, they're probably looking at so many different screens. Be careful not to interrupt the moderator. Their job is already very difficult.
So he did have 1 extra minute during that opening, and so you would get 1 extra minute added onto your 5-minute response if you'd like.
Sure, I'd like that, please.
Yeah, but Believer is saying their job is not sleeping with their. Yeah, okay, we were just kidding about that was a joke. That last part was not serious.
So in other words, he asked for 20 minutes, but he only used 16 minutes in his opening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just an extra minute. That's fine.
You got it.
All right, thanks, James. Okay, so first of all, Harris is saying that the state doesn't torture and abuse people. Hello, didn't you hear all of that statements I made about colonialism?
Okay, then now Daniel doesn't understand what Harris is saying. I don't think Harris was saying the state doesn't torture. He was saying that's not what we approve of. They're saying that violates human rights. I think Daniel has this misunderstanding that because we're against Islamic states, we endorse everything non-Islamic states do. Like he thinks like we think in binary, like, oh, Islamic State bad. Oh, that means Western countries, Western states are all good and they do no evil. And we just like, yay, Western states. Yay, if you do it because you're not Islamic, it must be good. I don't know why you're torturing people, but it's not Islamic. So it must be a good thing that you're torturing people. Guys, we don't defend everything that is not Islamic, obviously. So he's like, what Harris was saying is that torture is bad. It violates human rights. We're against that. These countries, what if they're doing, that's not within the standards that we are endorsing here. And Daniel is now responding like, oh, Harris said states do not torture. Again, they just listen to each other, guys.
How the state is genociding.
I mean, to be fair, though, it's easier to understand what people are saying when you can pause them and rewind and then keep listening to it. So I know I might misunderstand people during the debates as well.
People, torturing people, raping women. The state powers.
Look at this.
Okay, thanks, James.
Look at this.
Okay, so first of all, Harris is saying that the state doesn't torture and abuse.
Did he say that the state doesn't torture and abuse, or did he say that we don't like that? That's against
people. Hello, didn't you hear all of that statements I made about colonialism? How the state is genociding people,
Yeah, those are bad things. Naughty countries don't do these things. That's genocide, guys. Genocide is bad. Okay, don't do genocide. We don't endorse genocide. Okay, genocide, bad. Okay, just because non-Islamic countries do it, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden we would like, yeah, I guess okay, genocide, maybe. It's not Islamic.
Torturing people, raping.
Yeah, exactly. Murtad is saying they also seem to think we wholeheartedly endorse the entire thing as if it's scripture. As if we can't independently assess and disagree with things our own society has done. Yes.
Women, the state powers, the human rights nations that you're defending in this whole debate.
Human rights nations. That's a very clever tactic that Daniel uses, okay? So he wants to associate the crimes that these countries do with human rights. And here's the step-by-step version he does it, okay? Because he's like, human rights are being promoted in certain countries, okay? I am going to make these countries, label these countries as human rights nations. Okay, now I'm going to look at these nations and I'm like, oh, these nations are committing crimes. Very violent crimes, war, torture, genocide, blah, 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 okay? So given that I just label these countries as human rights nations, then whatever they do must be and endorsed in lines with human rights measures or standards. Therefore, torture, genocide, war is endorsed by human rights. Therefore, human rights bad. Yay! You see how that works? Okay, then you don't get to do that. It's like he's doing a magic trick and he's trying to, I don't know, like, if you don't pay attention for a half a second, maybe you will buy that. But guys, these things that you're mentioning that these countries are doing that are bad, they violate human rights. Okay, you can't just label these countries as human rights nation and all of a sudden make it seem like everything they do therefore must be in line with human rights. Obviously not. Okay. Good. It would be as if like also here's another thing is correlation not causation, right? So these countries, okay, they have prospered, and in countries that are more prosperous, you're more likely to get human rights advocacy, okay? Because when you are a more prosperous country, the level of average income people have, the economic power that people have increases. And when individual citizens' economic power increases, their power relative to their state increases. And when individual powers relative to their state increases, they start demanding more than just food and shelter and security. They start demanding more things, such as human rights. Okay, so if you have more human rights advocacy and you have governments that have to somehow respond to these demands for human rights a bit more in other countries, that doesn't mean this entire country is now doing everything in accordance with human rights. Yes, there's more prevalence of human rights advocacy in these countries, but that's a pushback against these crimes that these states are committing. The human rights advocacy that exists in these countries is a response to that. The crimes are not a result of the human rights advocacy. The human rights advocacy is a pushback against the crimes that are being committed by these countries, by these states. And in fact, we see that human rights advocacy has been successfully pushing back against a lot of these crimes, not completely. It's not like they have been eliminated, but they have had their successes. We have seen progress. Just because these countries commit crimes against humanity, that doesn't mean the human rights advocacy has been completely unsuccessful. In fact, if you think like the causation, the direction of he sees correlation and he assumes causation. Okay, he sees that these countries do commit some some crimes, and he sees that they also advocate for human rights, and he just assumes there's a causation. But in fact, if the advocacy for human rights was removed from the equation, the crimes that you're highlighting would have been more. There would be more abuse of humans. There would be more torture. There would be more genocide. If anything, the countries that you're talking about, these Western countries, all the crimes that you're highlighting, there's less of them we showed in the previous episode, we showed you the data. Yeah, and again, everything he's mentioning are violation of human rights. We went through some of the articles in the previous episodes. He's like, oh, you support human rights, but human rights countries do this and this and that and that. Like, yeah, and those are violations of the human rights articles that we keep highlighting. We're against them because we are for human rights. It is too easy.
Have raped how many women? Have imprisoned how many women?
Yeah, violations of human rights, the thing that you are against, Daniel.
Tortured through solitary confinement and waterboarding how many women? Okay, so
who on their right mind would think that, oh, we must be defending torture of women and waterboarding and stuff if we are on the side of human rights? Who was pushing against Who was pushing against waterboarding by the United States? It was human rights advocates. Who was successfully pressuring the state to try to stop these things? Who on their right mind would think like, oh, United States does waterboarding, United States has human rights advocates, therefore human rights promotes waterboarding? Who thinks like that? That is so dumb. This is too easy. Why would people accept this line of reasoning?
You are a totalitarian because you only trust the state to have this kind of power in Islam.
We don't. No, guys, we don't trust the state. We don't trust the state. That's why we have human rights. The reason why we want to have human rights standards is because we don't trust the state. We want to limit the power of the state with these standards. We want to introduce limitations to what the state can do.
Men can't torture their wives. In Islam, men can't, according to the Sharia, men cannot, even physically hurt their wives in a permanent kind of way. And it's clear that you don't understand the employee-employer example, because in most cases, the employee, if the employer says, your manager says, do this, you are part of an organization, there's a hierarchy, and there's a relationship between the manager and the employee. So the manager says, we need to get this done, and everyone works together. There's no need to call security and physically remove, right?
Right. So his argument is like the security is there. You understand that the potential for physical violence exists because of security. And that's why security is not called, because everybody understands that that threat is there. So again, I told you why the analogy doesn't make sense, but you have to understand what he's saying in order to be able to address it.
Force and use a nightstick or a gun or a taser to remove employees.
Oh yeah, secular reality is saying you guys forgot to hit the like button. Please make sure you do that. Help us grow this channel. Help us make more people see this. Again, guys, if you hit the like button, what happens is that YouTube suggests these videos to people who are not even subscribed to us, and that's how we grow, okay? So it doesn't cost you anything other than half a second, and you are helping us, okay? I'm here spending time trying to like give you something that you might appreciate and learn from or enjoy, okay? And all you have to do to return the favor, just hit the like button. So just do it, please. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Similarly, in Islamic law, that kind of thing doesn't happen. It only happens rarely. As rare as it would be for these corporations to physically remove and taser their employees. So there's complete parallel here between because you have to have the ability to enforce structure and norms with any hierarchical organization. And Islam is just saying that families have that kind of authority, and the patriarch has that kind of authority. It's not unfettered authority, it's not unchecked authority, but he has that in the same way that many institutions, hierarchical institutions in the modern world West, human rights respecting West, they have those kinds of authorities and the right to beat people as well. The only difference is you think that only the state,
So what Daniel doesn't understand is that if you introduce that type of relationship between a husband and a wife, that is already a broken family. You know what I mean? Like, he thinks like you're saving the family by introducing the idea of a husband being able to beat the wife. But, the nuclear family that these people defend was a progress from the previous extended type of family. And the idea of romance and love was introduced into marriage, which wasn't the norm before that, right? This is whole romantic version of what a husband-wife relationship is supposed to be about. And this new understanding, like they keep acting like they're on the side of love and, husbands and wives being in love with each other. But again, they don't understand that this is a more of a modern concept of what a marriage is supposed to be about, okay? And that family structure, the nuclear family, the romantic nuclear family structure that they defend is actually very modern. And the whole idea of a husband being able to beat his wife doesn't go along with the family structure that they even be defending, right? That is not the romantic relationship that a husband and wife have. And in fact, the new modern family structure will be broken emotionally, will be broken apart based on the standards that they want to introduce in previous family structures. Guys, family structures change because of the economic conditions of our time. Okay, this is how it happens. This is people who are choosing their life themselves. They respond to the new environment that they'll be living in, right? So we go from extended to nuclear, and eventually we're going to be going from a nuclear family structure to a different family structure. I assume it might be the chosen family structure, right? So go from extended to nuclear and nuclear to the chosen family, okay? Again, these are responses to the economical reality of the society that we're living in. And you can't really stop that. There's nothing you could do to stop that, right? But the values that you had for previous family structures would not work in modern family structures.
Totalitarian, bureaucratic, technocratic state should have those kinds of rights. So there's not really a substantive difference there, and we can talk about it more if you need more explanation. But look, I just want to emphasize, we have seen how the extremist liberal doctrine of individual...
Even the idea of marriage being the form of creating families, that is also will be challenged, right? that is too much of a state influence in the way that people get to choose the families and the structure of the family. And eventually with the, right now, I think there's way too many advantages for married couple relative to unmarried couples, right? And given the cost, legal cost, the hurdles associated with creating, the legal structure for two people to be married, and given how much faster people need to respond in the bonds that they create with other humans around them, given the changing environment that they live in, and how rigid and unflexible the whole marriage relationship is, the evolution that we're going to be having is into creating more flexible ways for people to be with each other, and making all the legal advantages more accessible to long-term unmarried couples, so that people get to be, just married. The whole marriage situation shouldn't be just with people that have like a wedding and have all go through all that legal mess for somebody to be with each other. It should be easier. It should be more accessible, and all the legal rights that you get from a marriage should be accessible in way more formats, and in more ways that people get to. It needs to be, you get to be able to play around with it and create whatever structure that you want, while not having to, without the cost of not having all the legal advantages of a traditional nuclear family. And again, the reason why a lot of people are struggling right now is because we're moving to a societies where the nuclear family might not be the most ideal answer to many people's lives, but we don't have the framework for all these other alternatives to work, right? So we have a lot of alternatives to a nuclear family, but this legal and societal framework for all these other alternatives to work does not exist. So a lot of people are like, oh my God, look at these people being miserable. Well, yeah, they're miserable because they don't have access to all the framework and the infrastructure that exists for the nuclear family. Okay? You don't want to force people to live within a family structure that doesn't make them happy. And then you want them to have other options. But when they choose other options, the support for them and the legal structure and the societal structure doesn't exist for them. And they're like, oh, look at them, they're failing. Well, yeah, Sherlock, of course they're going to be failing when there's no support for them. So the solution is not to force them back into the nuclear family. The solution is to create an environment where these other formats of living is accepted, and there's support and legal, and legal support, societal support, normalization, acceptance. Once you introduce all of that, maybe these alternative forms of family all of a sudden become happy. And now you get the best of both worlds. You have more choices and you have support for those choices. Does that make sense? Oh yeah, secularity saying that is a good point, Armin. All my points are good points, but yeah, thank you.
Individual liberty at all costs threatens marriage, family, community. But really, this extremism threatens the very nature of humanity itself. Through the use of technology, modern liberal states now claim that people have the right to change their gender. If you don't want to be one gender.
Wait, hold on. The nun is saying in an Islamic state, you can have a man married to 4 women, all potentially prepubescent. I don't know. Underage. I'm just gonna say I can't. That's a tongue twister for me. The man can also have sex slaves. Truly a wonderful family and community section. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: we shouldn't put these next to each other, okay? Because having 4 wives or 4 women with a long-term relationship, and that there's no problem with that. That's okay if that's what you like, if that's what the man likes, and what all the 4 women are happy with that. In fact, guess what, guys? In our modern society, okay, if that's what you prefer, you get to have that, okay? That's what we envision for the future. If a woman wants to have 4 husbands, and the 4 husbands are okay with it, if that's a structure that you enjoy, all of you enjoy, go with that. If you're like, no, I don't like that structure. I prefer to have a family structure where there is 1 husband and 4 wives. and you're all happy with that? Yeah, okay, yeah, go with that. Yeah, you could have, guys, you can have that. You could have, you want one husband, guys, we actually do better than Islam. You could have 5 wives, not 4, 5 wives, if you like that. Yeah, see, you're like, you want to choose Islam because you get to have 4 wives. We allow you to have 5, 6, 7. You could go more than Islam. We think that's okay. We think that should be allowed. Just make sure it's the other way is allowed as well. If a wife manages to find 4 husbands or 5 or 6 husbands and they make it work somehow, that should also be allowed. Okay, guys. So we allow more wives than Islam. Okay. So as long as you could all make it work, and as long as you're all happy, you should be able to do that. Okay. So don't put that whole having 4 wives things next to that, all that like child marriage and sex slaves. You know, when you put that next to each other, it makes it seem like they're all as bad. Again, if somebody wants to have more than 1 wife, that should be completely fine. Don't make it seem as bad as those other 2 things. Yes, takbir, everyone, takbir. Secular say, I see I've gotten better at taking compliments. Yes, I excel at everything that I put my mind at. Of course.
Gender, you can use technology to change it. Even children as young as 3.
People are liking this. They're saying, Alhamdulillah. Guys, come to modernity. Islam only lets you have 4 wives. Islam, come to modernity. You get to have more than 4 wives. But the only challenge is that you don't get to. You have to actually manage to convince them to marry you. You can't physically force them to submit to you. That's unless they're into that, unless they want you to physically force them to submit to you, then do that. Okay, then enjoy that.
Should have this option according to the gender and sexuality experts who operate at the highest levels of academia in the Western world and government. But even beyond gender, people are now given.
Yeah, actually, guys, here's another thing. We on the side of human rights, on the side of modernity, we actually do allow wife beating. Okay, we do allow wife beating. The wife beating that we allow is different than the wife beating that Islam allows. The wife beating that we allow is kinky. It's a wife beating that the wife is just like enjoying. Okay, that's the only type of wife beating that we allow. Okay, it involves a lot of like ropes and cuffs and stuff like that. It's fun. It's very different. Okay.
Given the choice to change their species. Some people feel that they're not actually human, but they're actually cats or dogs deep down inside. Nowadays, certain surgeries can be used to physically alter bodies to transition people to their desired appearance. This is what philosophers like Yuval Harari call.
Wait, what did I completely messed up? I wasn't even listening.
People have the right to change their gender. If you don't want to be one gender, it threatens marriage, family, community. But really, this extremism threatens the very nature of humanity itself. Through the use of technology, modern liberal states now claim that people have the right to change their gender. If you don't want to be one gender, you can use technology to change it. Even children.
That's what I call progress. Yes, you get to change your gender if it doesn't fit you. That's fantastic. Daniel. You're speaking. You're talking as if that's a bad thing.
As young as 3 should have.
I think it's 3. Is that the case, Daniel? Hold on.
Nature of humanity itself. Through the use of technology, modern liberal states now claim that people have the right to change their gender. If you don't want to be one gender, you can use technology to change it. Even children as young as 3 should.
No, Daniel, not as young as 3. You're talking about something you have no clue about. You don't get to change your gender even as young as 3. You don't get to do that. You don't understand what puberty blockers are. See, guys, this is when people talk about things that they have no idea. He's talking about puberty blockers, okay? He's talking about puberty blockers. Puberty blockers don't change your gender. Puberty blockers give you the choice to change your gender when you are an adult. Hold on. Let me get that. Somebody's saying, do we get 73 versions? See, the thing is that, yes, as long as they're adults, but you have to go. Nobody is going to give that to you. You're not offered, like when we say we allow you having 4 or 5 or 6 wives or whatever else you want. It's not like Islam. It's not given to you. you have the challenge is upon you. Like you have to, if you're good enough at convincing 73 adult virgins, 72 or 80 even adult virgins to be with you, then good on you. Okay, but I don't even know why you would go with virgins. Anyways, that's a different discussion. But yes, you get all of that. See, modernity is not that bad. Yeah. So this guy, what was he talking about? No, yeah, he's saying 72 in the Quran, but yeah, we give you 73. But again, the challenge is upon you. You have to convince them to be with you. I'm pretty sure by the third version you will realize that this was not a good idea. That you want somebody that knows what they're doing. Anyways, what am I talking about? Oh yeah, this one. Puberty blockers. Like, wait, let's make sure we're not strawmanning him. Listen to this.
Should have this culture of humanity itself. Through the use of technology, modern liberal states now claim that people have the right to change their gender. If you don't want to be one gender, you can use technology to change it. Even children as young as 3 should have this option, according to the gender and sexuality experts who opt.
No, bullcrap here. You guys see this, right? So this claim is unsubstantiated. Professional organizations such as Endocrine Society recommends against puberty blockers for children who have not reached puberty, and recommend that patients be at least 16 years old before beginning hormone treatment for feminization or masculinization of the body. The last step is transitioning to another gender. Gender reassignment surgery is only available to those 18 and older in United States. The onset of puberty is the baseline for medical intervention, right? Am I reading it? Puberty typically occurs between ages of 10 and 14 for girls and 12 and 16 for boys. Guidelines for the medical care of transgender patients developed by organizations such as the Endocrine Society and the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. Begin with the counseling and psychological evaluation. Hey, so guys, there's a lot of standard. You go through so many loops before you get to do the change your gender. Like this is done with a lot of care, with a lot of steps that you have to pass, a lot of evaluation. You don't be like, hey, I'm a 3-year-old and I think I need to be a boy instead of a girl. Look, whoop. Like we change your gender before you even finish that sentence, 3-year-old. Congratulations, you're now a boy. Okay, it doesn't work like that. Okay, this is all like misrepresentation of facts. Okay, you have to be an adult. Okay, to be able to change your gender. Even before you're an adult, if they do anything to you, they give you puberty blockers so that you are not cursed by the hormones of puberty. If they see that you're potentially transgender, they delay your they would delay your puberty, so you do get to have that choice as an adult, not as a child. And even as an adult, you have to go through all these steps to make sure that you're the right candidate for this. Again, this is a complete misrepresentation of what's happening. And guess what? I'm pretty sure that through all of this, with all these standards, with all these steps that you have to pass to get transgender reassignment surgery or whatever it's called, I'm pretty sure somebody is making a mistake somewhere, and there's going to be some bad practices, and they're going to find those examples and going to go like, see, they do this. And guess what? That is so stupid that they do that, because every medical procedure, we have mistakes. With every medical procedures, okay? My father is a heart surgeon, okay? He has told me horror stories within medicine of heart surgeries going wrong. Do we end the practice of heart surgery because we have examples of some serious mistakes? No, we don't. That is ridiculous, okay? So again, these people make it seem like, oh yeah, 3-year-olds are just getting transgender surgeries left and right, okay? Which is nonsense. We have so many guidelines where how this is done, to who this is done, and based on what standards, which are very strict. But then every time we say that, they go find an anomaly of one example, of two examples of something that went wrong, or like here and there, and we're like, oh, see, it's all wrong. But we don't apply the same standards to any other medical procedures where they also have examples of things going wrong. But nobody says like, oh, we need to end heart surgery or brain surgery because here are examples of some serious mistakes, right? Yeah, secular rights is saying, yeah, it takes years. Stop. YouTube gods, guys, let us all pray. All hold everybody together with me. Okay? All of you, please. Dear YouTube guys, we were talking about misunderstandings by other people. We were correcting something. This was not our opinion. We were correcting other people's wrong opinions. Okay? Please do not be stupid. Please understand that what our position is completely in line with YouTube's community standards. Do not be dumb. We are fighting against transphobia and medical misinformation. We're not promoting it. If you hear us saying it, it's because we're saying something that we are against, not because we are promoting it ourselves. Okay? Amen. Everybody say amen. Amen in the live chat. Thank you, YouTube gods. The only gods we fear here at Atheist Republic is a YouTube god. Hold on. Begin with and also, guys, the YouTube guys like the like button. Okay, they enjoy. It's kind of like the YouTube's clit. Okay, just rub the YouTube clit, which is the like button. Just rub it right now. Okay, so make the gods happy. Goddess, maybe I should say goddess. Begin with the canceling. Okay, so where were we? Oh, guys, amen. Good job, guys. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. That was very well done. This was our first prayer together. Hold on, where were we? Guidelines of medical care and transgender. We already read that point. Begin with the counseling and psychological evaluation by a team of medical professionals before any physical interventions are considered. If patients have begun to go through puberty and they have demonstrated a long-lasting and intense pattern of gender unconformity or gender dysphoria, then treatments such as puberty blockers can be considered according to the standards of care for transgender people by the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. Gender dysphoria refers to, okay, puberty blockers which suppress the release of testosterone and estrogen during puberty allow adolescents more time to explore their gender unconformity and other developmental issues, and can be used for a few years. The standards of care say. One guideline for giving the medication says parents or guardians must consent to the treatment and also provide support to the young youth during the process. So you see what happens, guys. The gender, people don't understand. Hormone therapy and gender reassignment treatment is different from puberty blockers. Puberty blockers are given to people that are not yet adults, just a couple of years before they're adults, not like too young, okay? Because there are so many signs that shows that these people might have gender dysphoria. And if you let somebody with gender dysphoria go through puberty, the puberty will like wash your body with so many hormones that will make gender reassignment a lot more difficult. Okay, so puberty blockers don't make children go through gender reassignment. It just lets you make the decision as an adult. It delays puberty so that when you are an adult and now you get to decide, you haven't been cursed by puberty, and now a lot of the things that the hormones that puberty exposes you to makes it very difficult for you not to go through a gender transition. We want to make sure that you have enough time to make that decision yourself. And then if you go through puberty and you realize that you don't have gender dysphoria, that you don't want to have gender transition, then you don't. You make that decision as an adult. This is giving people more choice. This is the opposite of making this decision for children. This is making sure that the children the children don't have this decision made for them by their puberty. Because if you don't give them puberty blockers, now the children didn't have it. That as an adult, you're like, why did you make me go through puberty? Why did you force this? Why did you force puberty upon me as a child where I didn't have the option to make that choice. You should have given me that option to give me the option as an adult. Do you understand the difference between gender transition and puberty blockers? So these people are saying that you're making the decision for children and children don't have a choice. And we're like, no, you are making the decision for children by forcing them to go through puberty before they had their say. So the puberty blockers actually make sure that nothing is forced upon children. It's the opposite of what they say it is. Do you guys understand? So do you guys understand what I'm trying to say? So this is exactly everything the opposite of what Daniel is saying. It's the opposite. Again, they throw these words out and the audience just hears it like, oh, like they're telling me that they're making children go through transition. And they just take that and just accept it. They don't go check it. They don't go check it. That's too much to ask. That is too much to ask. They just believe you. They're just fear-mongering all over the place. They're forcing children. No, they're not. He's saying, okay, so first of all, he's saying we don't know for sure pausing is without negative consequences. I'm not saying they do. They're just saying more research is needed. Guys, there is potentially some harm, okay? They admit there's some harm, especially with like maybe some bone structure, but it's very little. And even if there is more harm, the harm must be so little that hasn't been detected yet. The harm associated with pausing puberty for just a few years is so insignificant compared to the harm of letting somebody with gender dysphoria go through puberty. And then the transition that they have to go through after they had been hit by the hormones by puberty, you know how much more damaging that is to you? Like imagine you have gender dysphoria and you get all the hormones associated with the wrong gender, just let all your body be exposed to all of that. You know the harm associated with that is so much more compared to all these little minor harms that you could think of just by a few years of delaying puberty. Most of the studies show that the harm is so small. And you're like, well, we might find future harm later. Okay, but that's true with every medical procedure that we do. Every medical procedure we do, there's some known harms and there's some unknown harms. Based on the information that we have, it's a crime to let these people go through, be exposed to, like, oh my God, these hormones are harmful to them. What about the hormones of puberty to somebody with gender dysphoria? Is that not a harm to them? Yeah, bone density. Yes, very little bone density issues that could be addressed. That is nothing compared to the harm of puberty to somebody with gender dysphoria. Hey, Abdullah Samir in live chat. Oh, shh, guys, he told me not to bring attention.
Operate at the highest levels of academia in the Western world and government. But even beyond gender, people are now given the choice to change their species. Some people feel that they're not actually human, but they're actually cats or dogs.
Okay, just because people get to say that on social media, that doesn't mean this is being recognized by the medical community. See how it just switches between one thing to another? One thing that is actual medicine, actual science. Oh, well, now people are being allowed to change their species. What are you talking about? No, they're like allowed how? Allowed in the same way that people are allowed to go through gender transition or allowed to just make claims on social media. Of course, they're not allowed to make that claim like, oh, yeah, I'm actually wolfkin. I'm actually, my identity is wolf. Like, of course, they're not allowed to say that. You put that right next to talking about gender transition as if there's a medical body of people who are and scientists that are saying like, oh, yeah, you get to be able to, species identities is the real thing, and people need to be able to go through species reassignment. See how you just put that next to each other? This is a slippery slope fallacy. You're like, oh, if you allow this, we're just going to directly move. Like, now this is going to be allowed. Oh, my God. This is not the same thing, Daniel. Yeah, we're not going to stop people from making claims about them having other species identity on social media. Just because we're not going to stop them from doing that, why would we do that? People get to be, I mean, look at you. You get to be ridiculous on social media and make ridiculous claims. We're not stopping you. So why should we make other people for making ridiculous claims on social media? That's not the same thing as people being allowed to go through gender reassignment.
Deep down inside. Nowadays, certain surgeries can be used to physically alter bodies to transition people to their desired appearance. This is what philosophers like Yuval Harari call transhumanism. But
hey, transhumanism is based, okay? Transhumanism is going to save humanity. Yeah, you're like, oh my God. Hey, he's like, if we allow trans people go through gender reassignment, we're gonna one day have transhumanism, like the thing that is going to save the goddamn planet and solve the issue of death and disease and hunger. Oh no, not transhumanism. You know, guys, I agree with Daniel actually. Normalizing transgender people being part of society, accepting them, and transgender surgery, gender reassignment surgery becoming acceptable and normalized is going to soften the blow to when it comes to people accepting transhumanism one day. Right? This whole appeal to nature of like, if we want to replace someone's heart with something that operates better than the heart, people are going to have like emotional resistance. People are going to make appeal to nature, appeal to tradition, fallacies. It's going to be all over the place. Like, oh, it might be a better working heart, but it's not the real thing. It's not natural. It's not traditional, whatever bullcrap they're going to come up with, right? Transgender people are helping us normalize transhumanism, and therefore transgender people are going to normalize everything, all the barriers that exist between us and solving death, disease, and hunger. Guys, transhumanism is going to end death, disease, and hunger. So I want everybody in the live chat to say thank you, trans rights activists, for bringing that closer to us. You are basically a lot of trans rights activists do not know that they are actually helping us with solve death, disease, and hunger. Okay, so let them know. Let trans rights activists know that they're doing way more than just normalizing transgender people. So thank you to all the trans rights activists.
Gender and species transition is just the tip of the iceberg. You think they're going to stop with gender transition for kindergartners?
No, we're not, and that's a good thing.
No. They're just
not kindergartners. Again, this is such a lie.
This is what philosophers like Yuval Harari call transhumanism. But gender and species transition is just the tip of the iceberg. You think they're going to stop with gender transition for kindergartners?
No, there's no gender. I showed you guys this. I fact checked him. I fact checked him out of existence. His argument said this, but like no, they're not doing gender transitions for kindergartners. That's a lie. Okay.
No. They are just getting started. Imagine this human rights argument. When babies are born with a certain set of...
Imagine an argument, a ridiculous argument that I'm about to make that is not what's happening, but what's happening is not scary enough. So I'm going to come up with a scenario that's a lot more scary because I need to scare the crap out of you, and reality is not scary. So I have to give you a hypothetical situation to make you more scared, okay? Because they're coming after your kids. They're coming. Guys, they're coming for your kids. They're coming for your kids' genitals. Save your kids' genitals. Fight modernity to defend your kids' genitals. That's the argument, okay? Fight modernity because modernity is going to come after your kids' genitals. And that's fear. That's perfect fearmongering. Like, if anything is worth defending is your kids' genitals, okay? So if you want to make people scared about the world changing, make it seem like they're coming for your kid without your consent, without any nothing. Like, just coming for it. Just coming. You're not going to have a choice, okay? Right? Like, this is such a perfect method of making people scared, okay? What's the most thing what are the most sensitive things, the most the things that people get the most defensive about? Children and sexual things, okay? This is the appeal to nature and tradition is the most used when it comes to children and sexuality, okay? Why not just mix them together and be like they're coming for for your kids' sexuality? Like, it's the perfect story. It's the perfect boogeyman. Okay, it's all the fears of every single parent come together in one place. Okay, so if you could get them to believe that your kids' genitals are at risk because of modernity, there is no more powerful fear to introduce to people for people to reject modernity.
No, they're just getting started. Imagine this human rights argument. When babies are born with a certain set of genitalia.
See, imagine this argument, because you know why you have to imagine it? Because it doesn't exist.
Just getting started. Imagine this human rights argument. When babies are born with a certain set of genitalia that could negatively impact their gender identity later on. We need to make sure to genetically alter all fetuses so that everyone is born without any particular set of genitalia. That way, everyone can choose their gender more easily and seamlessly when they're older.
So imagine that we go and change fetuses so when they're born, they have no genitalia. Okay? Again, this argument does not exist anywhere. Nobody is suggesting this except Daniel. I mean, maybe there's somebody, I don't know. Okay? Nobody's saying is seriously suggesting this. Okay? And the reason why you have to be afraid of this, because I don't have enough legitimate points to make you afraid that modernity is so good that I have to come up with ridiculous examples to make it look bad. Because otherwise, if I actually show you reality of modernity, you might actually like it, because it's making everyone's lives better. Modernity is making everyone's lives better. I have to come up with this dysphoric fictional situation that doesn't exist to make it look bad.
That's in line with maximum liberty and maximum equality. Do you have a problem with forcibly altering fetuses to be born without genitalia? That means you're a transphobe. That means you're
right. Thank you. You know who's going for the genitals of children? Who's actually going for the genitals? I didn't even think of this, secular rarity. I didn't even think of this. How did I even not think of this? Who is actually, we're actually stopping you. Human rights advocates are the ones who are stopping you from going for children's genitals. Who does male circumcision? Who advocates for female circumcision? Male genital mutilation and female genital mutilation. Who advocates for that? It's religions. It's tradition. You want to save your children's genitals? Then accept modernity. Reject tradition. Reject religion. You, Daniel. It's you. It's your ideology that goes for children's genitals.
a bigot. That means you're against equality and human rights. Or imagine this argument. Men naturally have more testosterone, which makes them more prone to violence and rape.
That wasn't enough imagination. There's another imagination for something that doesn't exist.
Or imagine this argument. Men naturally have more testosterone, which makes them more prone to violence and rape. It also makes them physically bigger than women in stature. So we need to create a law which forces men to take treatments to decrease their testosterone.
No, nobody's going to make that argument, Daniel. You know why nobody's going to make that argument? Nobody's sane is going to make that argument because that's not the only thing that testosterone does. Testosterone does many good things. That's why it's there. Oh, testosterone makes people more violent and more rapey and more whatever, and therefore we should future generations. Modernity is gonna make you suppress your testosterone. Why would they do that, Daniel? We need testosterone. Testosterone does many things. Most of them are useful. In fact, all of them are useful. That's why it's there. Nobody's gonna remove testosterone. Here's what you don't understand. Some people need less testosterone. Some people need more testosterone. In fact, modernity is letting people decide that they want more testosterone if they need to. People go get testosterone treatment because there's not enough testosterone. Like they're men that get all. This is the opposite of what's happening, Daniel. The modernity means that they're going to force you to not to reduce your testosterone because testosterone makes you rapey. Really, Daniel? It seems like ever since we have modernity, people actually get to increase their testosterone when they want to or need to, and reduce it when they want to or need to. Like if you're old and you're like, oh, I can't get it up anymore. I can't have, you're like, what's wrong with me? You're like, oh, you don't have enough testosterone. Well, the doctor might prescribe testosterone. Maybe you want to increase it. Maybe like, hey, you know what? I don't even need testosterone, but I want to perform better at the gym. I don't recommend this, by the way. This is not very good, okay? Not a good idea. But you get to do that. In modern society, you could be like, hey, I want to increase my testosterone because I just want to. Okay? I don't even need to. I just want more testosterone. You get to do that. Or in this situation, somebody would be like, you know what? I'm a woman, maybe trapped in a man's body, and I want less testosterone. I want to be more feminine. The testosterone is making me less feminine, and I need to be more feminine. I want it reduced. Maybe you get to do that. Okay? So it's not, there's no state mandate. There will never be any state mandate that this is what your hormone levels should be for everybody. This is a ridiculous suggestion, and everything with modernity shows that we're not going to see. Daniel at the same time is suggesting that human rights means more freedom and more choices, while also saying modernity means that the state is going to mandate that you get this hormone levels and your genitals are going to be. Which one is it, Daniel? Is modernity more choices or less choices? Because I thought you were suggesting that the dangers with modernity is that you don't get any limitations and everybody gets to do whatever they want. Now you're saying the danger with modernity is that the state is going to come force you to have certain amount of testosterone. So are we going to have more control and that's why modernity is dangerous? Or are we going to have less control and that's why modernity is dangerous? You can't have it both, Daniel, because everything shows we're going the opposite. People get to decide their medical needs more themselves without less control, with less state involvement, as long as it's healthy, as long as it's not damaging, as long as they do it as an adult. Yeah, like Susanna is saying, I've never heard anyone argue to mass feminize all men before. Like, no, this doesn't exist, Daniel. You have to imagine things that don't exist because modernity is not scary enough. If you want to scare your audience of a modernity, you can't use reality because, you know why? Because modernity is awesome. Modernity is saving people's lives. Modernity is making us happier. Modernity is making us live with less death and disease and poverty. So you have to create these nightmares that don't exist.
Ideally, babies can be genetically modified so that everyone is born with the same exact.
Ideally, it could be that don't ignore the fact that that's not happening. In fact, the opposite is happening. But just imagine it, because scared modernity, be scared.
Amount of testosterone. That way, we can eliminate rape. We can eliminate domestic violence, and also make men equal to women.
You know how we could make less rape? By getting rid of Islam, which allows marital rape and also raping slaves. Okay.
In terms of physical size and strength.
Guys, I'm using the R word a lot here. YouTube doesn't like that. This video is going to get completely deprioritized. So please try to undo that by liking this video, okay? Because I'm using the R word a lot.
You're not pro-rape, are you? You're not pro-domestic.
And even if I'm not saying it, Daniel constantly says he's constantly saying it. So YouTube is hearing what Daniel is saying, so that's not going to help as well.
Violence, are you? Then you better support these mandatory genetic modifications. Otherwise, you're violating equality and women's rights.
Who's making that argument, Daniel? Show me who's making that argument that if you do not allow people to get rid of people's genitals and testosterone at birth, that means that you must be pro-rape. Show me the human rights activists that are making that argument. It doesn't exist. It's you, Daniel. You're making that argument. Nobody is making that argument. I mean, nobody in their right mind.
All kinds of drugs and technologies can be used.
Your ideology is pro-rape, and you're saying that maybe in the future of modernity, in my dysphoric imagination of what might happen, they're going to force everybody to not have genitals to avoid rape. Are you guys? This doesn't even the most ridiculous fictions don't have this in their. This doesn't even sell as a good like dysphoria novel. People are like, this is
used to fundamentally alter our psychologies, our genetics, our biology, all in the name of maximizing individual liberty and equality. And this is already happening. Just watch the news. There are no limits. This extremist liberal human rights ideology is
where is it happening? Where are people like, oh yeah, let's have no testosterone for babies and just remove all their genitals? Where is it happening?
To destroy the human race itself. And Islam is the only religion and the only community that is pushing back and saying, no, we want to be human beings. We want to preserve.
Oh yeah, we're gonna, instead of like, yeah, we are pro-rape.
Our marriages.
Like, guys, this is what are you talking about?
Destroy the human race itself.
See, this is, guys, this is what religions do as a whole, okay? They create an imaginary disease and they're like, we have the medicine. They create an imaginary problem and they make it seem like they are the only ones who have the solution to it. That has been the traditional way for religion to make itself relevant.
And Islam is the only religion and the only community that is pushing back and saying, no, we want to be human beings. We want to preserve our marriages, our families.
Just send me.
Our community, our humanity. We don't want this never-ending nightmare of human rights. No, thank you. We need to be clear here. This is not a debate about Sharia rejects freedom and equality versus human rights accepts them. This is really a debate about should we have restrictions on freedom and equality in order to preserve other important values versus no limits, freedom and equality extremism of Harris. That is what this debate is really about. Harris is selling you this extremism, and it's exactly like the child that only eats candy. That child is eventually going to die, just like these liberal societies are dying terrible deaths. But Sharia is the balanced meal, and that's why we need Sharia.
You got it. And with that, we're going to jump into open conversation. Want to let you know several things, folks. In particular, our guests are linked in the description. So if you want to hear more from either Daniel or Harris, you certainly can by clicking on those links below. And that includes in the podcast as we put our guest links there as well in each podcast episode of the debate. Also, very exciting tonight, a good old flat earth versus globe earth debate, as well as next week, very exciting, a debate on biblical ethics as Dr. Josh and Skylar return. It's going to be amazing. So hit that subscribe button for many more debates to come. And with that, we're going to jump into open conversation. I trust you, gentlemen. You're professional. You guys are easygoing, and I think it's going to go well. So open dialogue. The floor is all yours, guys.
All right.
Yeah, so do you want to respond to any of my points? Do you want to respond to the Botswana question? Explain, what does human rights really offer, Harris?
Well, human rights offer maximizing pleasure, reducing suffering, and well-being of humanity.
No, you said maximizing pleasure, but that conflicts with the well-being of humanity.
No, it doesn't.
That's why I just okay. Do you value marriage? Do you value family?
I value family. Yes, of course.
Okay, then how are you not seeing the death of?
Hold on, I need to message somebody. All right. Sorry, I don't know why I'm getting messages right now here.
Family in the world all over with, I read all those stats, so tell me.
Yeah, because but some of your stats, I don't know, I haven't been able to verify that. I don't take your word for it. But what you're saying about family, which family are you talking about? One man having 4 families. The whatever family challenges that we could have in the Western world as a result of falling fertility rate. I also quoted Pew result, which said that
But you said it was a good thing.
As women, listen to that. As well, for different reasons though. But as
wait, I need to rewind this.
With the well-being of humanity.
No,
that's why I just okay. So my point.
Open dialogue. The floor is all yours, guys.
Want a question? Explain. What does human rights really offer, Harris?
Well, human rights offer maximizing pleasure, reducing suffering, and well-being of humanity.
No, you said maximizing pleasure, but that conflicts with the well-being of humanity.
Okay, guys, this is complete bullcrap. Okay, a lot of people don't understand what we mean by pleasure. Okay, they pleasure and well-being, we use that interchangeably. They think like a lot of people don't think like when we say as utilitarians, when we say that we want to maximize pleasure and reduce misery, when they hear pleasure, they think we're talking just about food and alcohol and sex and partying, which all of that is good, by the way. I'm not saying all of it is bad, but short-term pleasures. They don't understand that when we're talking about pleasure, we also are including friendship, long-term goals, sense of meaning, family bond, caring, being cared for and giving care, taking care of the needy, feeling helpful, feeling useful, having a sense of awe, having a sense of belonging, being useful to others, finding other people, others who consider you important in their lives, having a sense of purpose. These are all pleasure, right? So when we say, and they're meaningful long-term pleasures, right? Rather than some other pleasures that are short-term. Again, short-term pleasures are fine, but we desire long-term pleasures more than just short-term pleasures. Okay, like that's something that we needs to be satisfied. So when we as utilitarians talk about maximizing pleasure, a lot of these people don't get it. Like, oh, you're just about pleasure. You just want to have like sex and a party and like just, but that at whatever cost, right? No, we have these desires that you think are not pleasure. Those are what we're talking about. Like, oh, pleasure. Look what he just said. Look at this.
We offer, Harris.
Human rights offer maximizing pleasure, reducing suffering, and well-being of humanity.
No, you said maximizing pleasure, but that conflicts with the well-being of humanity.
It doesn't. It's by definition the same thing. When we're talking about pleasure, we're talking about the well-being of humanity. It's the same thing by definition.
No, it
That's
doesn't.
why I just okay. Do you value marriage? Do you value family?
I value family, yes.
I like how Harris was like thinking about valuing marriage, but then family was like, yes, because there are other ways of creating family, guys. Marriage is just a legal, like people talk about marriage and family as if they're like one and the same thing. Marriage is just a way for legally recognizing a family. A family is a family without a legal recognition of a state to recognize it as a family. Marriage is just like a legal stamp on it. We want to find other ways for that stamp to be there without just the marriage. We want other ways for the family to be recognized so more people can realize their families other than the traditional way that religions have deemed for us. The current recognition of marriage, it has its roots in a lot of traditional and religious background that we don't appreciate. We want to be more flexible. Why is the legal marriage by a state the only way for us to get the stamp of approval of what is a family? Okay, so yeah, we do approve of families. We want to support family, and one way to support family is not limiting it the way we are based on standards that has been introduced to us by tradition and religion. We do want families.
Yes, of course,
Okay, then how are you not seeing the death of family in the world all over? I read all those stats.
It's because of your goddamn legal standards that is not letting us create more flexible situations of family structure for a new modern world. That's why we're struggling to respond to the modern needs, because your traditions and your legal standards are holding us back. Eventually, when we mature out of that, just like we went from a transition from the extended family to the nuclear family, we could mature to something better that works better for the current economic structure of the world today.
So tell me.
Yeah, because but some of your stats, I don't know. I haven't been able to verify that. I don't take your word for it.
So in fact, we're defending family better than you, Daniel, by realizing more flexible versions of it.
But what you're saying about family, which family are you talking about? One man having four families. The whatever family challenges that we could have in the Western world as a result of falling fertility rate. I also quoted.
No, falling fertility rate is not the reason families are having trouble. Okay, falling fertility rate is because people have more choices. People get to control what they want. Women have more say. Okay, that actually falling fertility rates is improving family because it's not improving. It's a sign of improvement because it's a sign of more people having more say over their lives. Okay, so it's not the falling fertility rate that is hurting the family. It's you not holding us back by not letting us realize better structures. Right? If you think guys, here's the thing. If you want to have 5 or 6 kids, modernity allows that. The reason why we have falling fertility rates is because if you want to have no kids or just one kid, modernity also allows that. That's why we're having falling fertility rate, because we have more options. One of the reasons why we have more options, and that's better for family because it means that there's no mandate of you need to have a father and a mother and then 6 kids. That does not need to be. Okay, does not need to be. So this is an improvement to family when you have more choices and create something that matches your needs and your life, your economic reality, and your identity better. There's an improvement on family. Also, guys, the reason why we're not going to the future of Earth is not going to be a dystopian nightmare is falling fertility rates. Like this whole fear of overpopulation of Earth has been refuted so many times, like we're not going to create a planet that is overpopulated, because as we progress, we have fallen fertility rates. Okay, so fallen fertility rates is a blessing to the goddamn planet, because apparently we're going to stop at, I think, 10 billion, right? Some people say 9 billion, some people say 10 billion. We're not going to go above 10 billion, and that's a good thing, because it's a good thing. It's a good thing that as economies progress, fertility rates drop, because if that was not reality, we will not have enough room for the people on this planet. We don't have enough resources to feed anybody. This is going to help us.
So we said that
But you said it was a good thing.
As women,
Yeah, it's a
listen to
good
that, as well, for different reasons though. But as
Harris is saying like, oh, falling fertility
Muslims
rates is hurting families, but it's not hurting families.
result of falling fertility rate, I also quoted Pew result, which said that
But you said it was a good thing.
As women, listen to that, as well, for different
Guys, fertility rates dropping in some places is a good thing, in some places it's a bad thing. Okay, in places where it's a bad thing is because they have had so many good things that now fertility rates is now becoming a problem. Okay, so countries where they're more economically developed, and because of urbanization, because of progress, because of all the things that makes women have more choices, and also because of the the relationship between wealth and fertility rates drops in those places. Okay, this is just a reality of how society develops. As it progresses, as it becomes more economically powerful, fertility rates drop. The benefits from that economic development is so much that you can't be like, oh, fertility rates is, this is now a problem that we're having. The reason why we're having this problem is because we won on so many other things. This is a slight issue that we can solve if we were not xenophobic and we allowed immigrants in. This will be no problem at all. Okay, but again, this is a problem in developed countries, but in less developed countries, which usually are struck by religion as well, we have the opposite problem. We have overpopulation problem. Okay, so you can't be like low fertility rates is a global problem everywhere, and the solution in Islam. Well, I mean, if it's true that Islam encourages higher fertility rates, then that's a problem for most Islamic countries, because they're not developed and they're actually suffering for overpopulation. So thank you for confirming how big of a curse Islam is, especially to the countries that are Islamic, that are suffering from overpopulation.
reasons though. But as Muslims get more and more advanced, more educated,
again, fertility drops even in Islamic countries that are more progressed, more economically developed. Like last time we checked, fertility rates, for example, in Malaysia is a lot less than fertility rates in Somalia, because they're more economically developed. It's just it's just what happens. Islam is not going to be able to save that. Maybe it will try to hold it back a bit. I'm sure it does have an influence, but eventually progress will overcome that. Again, yes, fertility rates being so low in more developed countries is a problem, and this is a good problem to have. You know why? One reason why it's a good problem to have, because this will naturally, if people were less xenophobic, this will naturally would be a transfer of wealth from high income people to lower income people, because lower income countries will then have the resources, the manpower to send to higher resources. So let's see, this is actually such a beautiful problem. It's good that this is a problem. Okay, a country becomes rich, fertility rates drop, they need people, and therefore now they're going to need the manpower and the people from less developed country, less economically powerful countries. And if we could remove xenophobia, then there would be a transfer of people from lower income countries to higher income countries. And this is going to help lift up the lower income countries, because a couple of things are going to happen. First of all, these lower income people will go to these higher income countries and they will make more money. They will send a lot of that money back to their families. Some of them will go back to their countries and bring the skills and the know-how to, for their countries to develop faster. there will be a lot of more relationship between these two countries, the richer country and the poorer countries, and that better relationship will increase more trade, more political relationships, more economic relationships. And this problem that higher developed countries have with lower fertility rates, the solution to that, which will require getting immigrants, is going. The fact that this is a problem is going to help lift up those lower income countries. So this is a problem that more developed countries have, that I'm glad that they have that problem, because the solution to this problem will force them to lift up lower income countries. I'm glad that higher developed countries are suffering from this, because it would require, and also this will challenge xenophobia, because at some point the need for immigrants will be so much that even the average population will realize that for the sake of their pensions, for the sake of their tax income, they have to let go of their fear of their foreigners, and attitudes towards foreigners will be less hostile eventually. Okay? So I'm glad that this is a curse on more developed countries, because it will force them to lift the rest of the planet up. Does that make sense? Look at this idiot saying you're glad. First of all, it's not that, it's YOURU-apostrophe-RE, right? So that's not the right your. But anyways, you're glad the Europeans are dying out. Okay. This is another people that their minds on collectivism doesn't understand that an individual, a population, a reduction in the size of a population is not a tragedy, because people are not literally being killed. So we who are individualists, we don't think there's anything being lost if a certain population of people, because as long as nobody's being hurt, as long as nobody's suffering, the fact that there's less of a certain ethnicity, ethnicity is come and go. As the way that their population is being reduced, if it's not done by harmful way, if it's just because of lower fertility, nobody's being harmed. If that's happening because people are making more choices themselves and living their better lives, as long as nobody's being harmed by it, there's no cost with this. This is actually a benefit. This is not a cost. Oh my God, you're an idiot. I'm not going to
even. Their level of income goes up. Their fertility is also falling down. And also, as
That's a
you
bad
say,
thing.
One sec, just to let Harris finish.
it has to be, there has to be a balance. Well, 2.2 would be a good balance. Every forecaster of the world's population says that we can't even keep growing indefinitely, and 10 billion might be the absolute critical, and we will start falling down after that. So these challenges will come. There's nothing absolute. That is our argument. There's nothing absolute. What you advocate for, Daniel, you say that this is absolute. This is how it is. This is how it's supposed to be. You made a point about slavery. You like the other one that you said, well, it's not obligatory to go jihad. So okay, this is comfortable for you. And owning slave is not obligatory either. But it wasn't abolished. It wasn't abolished by that. No person can.
He didn't actually say it's not obligatory. He was never obligatory. The problem that we have with Islam is that it's allowed. He's not saying it's not. Yeah, the problem we have with Islam is not that it forces you to have slaves. The problem that we have with Islam is that it allows you to have slaves. And then you're coming here and saying, oh, well, it's not forced. So like, the claim was not that it's forced.
Defend, and to the best of my ability.
We don't Daniel was like, what? You're actually not forced to have slaves in Islam. Like, did we actually come and say like, oh, Islam teaches you that every Muslim must have a slave? You cannot decide, like, if you're a Muslim, did we say that Islam says that as a Muslim, if you say like, you know what, I'm okay, I don't need any slaves. They're like, oh no, this is un-Islamic. You must have a slave. We didn't make that claim. So for Daniel to come and say like it's not obligatory, he's responding to a claim that we're not making.
And please, I would like to hear your response on that too. You actually were pro-slavery. You were saying that you could even bring back slavery. So how could anyone defend having slavery and own?
Oh, look at this. This person thinks in the live chat thinking that they're defending Islam. Slavery is only allowed in the context of war, you idiot. You can't enslave random people. Great, Mustafa. Thank you, Mustafa. So Mustafa in like, guys, this is how they defend Islam. They think that they're defending Islam while saying slavery is allowed. Okay, Mustafa. Okay, sure. What did you say? Thank you for confirming that slavery is allowed in Islam. God, that these are the defenders of Islam. It's amazing.
Owning other people. What about the families of those people? I mean, they're always going to live beneath the master's heel. So
I mean,
so
do
whatever
you
challenges
agree?
that you have,
So you have
whatever
all
challenges
this
you have,
concern, all this concern about families, how they're treated with Islam through warfare, with slavery, and so forth. What about all of the destruction to families by colonialism, by modern neocon warfare, by the invasions and occupations of Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya and Vietnam, the Vietnamese Vietnam War, all of these things you just want to sweep under the carpet? How about we talk?
We don't sweep that under the carpet. Here, Daniel. They're bad. You know what? Yeah, all of the things that you mentioned, they're bad. You know why they're bad? Guess why they're bad? Guess what standard that we use to claim legally? I mean, morally, we already know that they're bad. But what standard we use for us to say legally that they're wrong? What do we do? What do we say? Anyone in the live chat, what do we say? All the things he mentioned. Where do we sweep them under the rug? No, we don't. We highlight them. I mean, at least we do. I don't know if Harris probably does as well. I'm not sure. But what do we say? We say they violate human rights. The very thing Daniel thinks that we use to endorse these things, the very standards that Daniel claims here that we use to endorse all these crimes that he mentioned, we actually use those standards to condemn these practices, these acts, every single one of them. We say, like, yeah, they're bad. They violate human rights. Daniel, they violate human rights. We're against them because we are on the side of human rights. You know how you can tell? It's human rights. We are on team human. We're on the side of humans. What you are saying violates the humans' right, and therefore we're against it. Hold on, let's go through the list one more time with each other.
About the million, all of the destruction.
Yeah, we say it's wrong. We do say it's wrong. Hold on.
To family.
that you have.
So you have
Whatever
all this
challenges you
concern, all this concern about families, how they're treated with Islam through warfare, with slavery, and so forth. What about all of the destruction to families?
You know how you could tell sometimes that you're doing whataboutism? First of all, when you start your sentence, what about? Oh, you say this is wrong. What about? You literally say what about? That must give you a pause that, hey, am I doing whataboutism? Given though I just said you say this, what about that? Like, that's the perfect structure of doing whataboutism. Like, how could you not tell, like, hey, maybe I'm doing whataboutism here, when you literally say what about? Okay, here.
With Islam through warfare, with slavery, and so forth. What about all of the destruction to families by colonialism?
Wrong. Well, they're bad. They're bad. Okay, bad. Guys, let's condemn it with me. Condemn it. Colonialist, destroying families. What's the guys? What do we say to that? What's your verdict? Give me your verdict. Good or bad? Good or bad? Colonialist, destroying families. We're on the side of team human rights. Do we think that's a good thing or a bad thing? We're on the side of human rights here, right? Oh, there we go. Bad. Secularity saying bad. Bad. Guys, they see? We're saying bad. Good. They see bad. Yes, there we go. Colonialist, destroying families is bad. Guys, bad. Destroying family, bad. Okay, not good. We do not approve. We do not approve. We do not approve. Bad. Okay, so we do. What's the next?
By modern neocon warfare, by the invasions and occupations of Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya and Vietnam, the Vietnamese Vietnam War, all of these things you just want to sweep under the carpet.
No, we don't. We don't actually. Hey, why just Vietnam? Cambodia, United States, like this, the crimes that the United States committed in Cambodia, they're all hard, like wiped out a large percentage of population for no reason, not even bad reason. Like, United States destroyed Cambodia, not even for bad reasons, for no goddamn reason at all. Not that it could be anybody could tell. We highlight that these are war crimes. United States has committed war crimes. United States has committing. You know what, Daniel? In fact, we go further than that. You're not mentioning the worst one. The worst one is right now. You're not talking about Afghanistan. The worst war crimes that the United States has been responsible for is for their support of Saudi Arabia's war on Yemenis people. On Yemen. the greatest humanitarian crisis of our time right now is happening in Yemen with the aid of the United States. We mentioned that. Those are war crimes. They violate, and guess what? They violate human rights. Human rights is not like, oh yeah, go and do that because the United States is doing it. All of a sudden, because the United States is doing it, all of a sudden it makes it A-okay. All of a sudden it makes it like in line with human rights values. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. We condemn that.
How about we talk about the millions of people that were killed because of forced famines, because of British colonialism, the same British colonialism that was trying to spread human rights and civilization and enlightenment to the subcontinent.
It's not the same people. Europe is more than just one entity. It's not just not one person. The people in Europe who were like, hey, like, let's not give the Bangladesh food because like this starve Bangladeshis to death. Was it Churchill that did that, right? Like you're like, oh, these are the same people who are advocating for human rights. Well, there's 3 different groups of people, okay? People who just violate human rights from Europe, okay? That's bad. People who promote human rights in Europe, yay, thank you so much for spreading great values. And actually, what they live by is in line with what they support. And there are people who say they support human rights and they go violate human rights. Those are hypocrites. Those are Daniel, those are our munafiqeens. You know how you have munafiqeens in Islam? We human rights advocates, we also have munafiqeens. We have people in our camp who say they support human rights and then they go violate human rights. We condemn them. Just because they talk human rights doesn't mean that we believe them given that the actions that the crimes that they're committing. Okay? Those are human rights munafiqeen. I just made that up. Okay? So they're not all the same. Just because you're like, oh, these are the same Europeans. Europe is more than just one individual, Danielle. There are different people here in there, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. Just because they happen to be living in the same area, that doesn't mean that we're going to judge all of them and condemn all of them for the crimes of some of them. This is your mind. Again, this is your mind on collectivism. When you think like Daniel and Raju, collectivists, and you look at an entire group of people and either praise them or condemn them collectively as a whole, you see how ridiculous it is for you to be a collectivist. We individualists, we take every individual and we only hold them responsible for the values that they spread and the actions that they are doing. That individual, you're not responsible for your entire community. Like, look at this. Okay. Al-Mustafa is saying, no, those are the founders of human rights. Oh, yeah, all of Europe, every single individual one of them. Guys, you know who else came out of Europe? Adolf H., which I'm not going to say the name. Do you think because he's a European and some Europeans were the main promoter of human rights, that would make Adolf H. from Germany, from Nazi Germany? Again, I'm not going to say his name. Does that make him the founder of human rights? He was from Europe. Oh my God, human rights came from Europe. He was from Europe. Therefore, it makes him one of the founders of human rights. How ridiculous do you have to be to make arguments like this? Come on, Mustafa. You could be better than this. You could do better. Don't be so stupid.
Your ancestors faced that kind of genocide and that kind of forced famine. And here, you don't want to stand by that? Tell us where you stand on colonialism because you avoided that question.
Okay, Harris needs to say, like, where do you stand by? You don't want to, what did he say? This is an obvious response, and I think Harris doesn't do a good job here.
And here, you don't want to stand by that? Tell us.
No, you're like, no! Harris should be like, no, I don't know. He should have been like, no, I don't stand by that. I don't stand by colonialist crimes. I don't stand by genocide. I don't stand by forced famine. I don't. Easy.
Where you stand on colonialism because you've avoided that question. You just want to talk about, oh, Muslims.
Yeah, Harris, actually, Daniel is right about this. Harris needs to be more outspoken about how much he condemns all of this.
Are barbaric because
this, I actually admit, we have this problem in the ex-Muslim community. Like, some of the people in our community dance around condemning crimes by Western countries. You shouldn't just be picking like, oh, I'm just going to, like, even if you want to condemn Islamic crimes, be consistent. It will help you be it will help you highlight crimes by Islamic theocracies more if you show that that's your standard that you have with every state.
As we practiced slavery, I gave you the argument for why that was not only morally justified, it was morally necessary. And all of these other cultures practiced it. All of these other religions condoned it. I cited you Lawrence Keeley, an academic who explains exactly why you have to have it to survive. Otherwise, you're going to be wiped off the face of the earth. You haven't addressed.
Okay, Daniel, every time I checked, when you cited something, every time I checked, it wasn't saying what you said it did. Okay, so I'm not gonna. You just mentioning some study there. I'm not going to assume that you're citing it correctly. Given that every time, even today, every time I check, like when it comes to the whole transgender thing, yeah, like no, we don't believe you.
Any of these things. And I just want to ask you, when you say that, okay, fine, our fertility rates
I'm going to forget all your points, Evan. If you're asking me these questions, I can respond very quickly. We can go back and forth very quickly. It's up to you. The more you talk, better it is for me.
Okay, I'll keep talking. The fertility rate.
Look at this. Mustafa is saying you stand by colonialism because you believe that secular liberalism is universal, which makes you an expansionist by default. Mustafa, just make up stuff like you don't address actually what we're saying. Just make up our positions for yourself and then attack the straw man. Just like you don't actually listen to it. Like we're saying, like, oh, this is what we believe. We condemn this. And then you're like, no, you don't. This is what your position is, and therefore your position is wrong. So instead of actually listening to what we're saying, what we believe, just make up our beliefs and then attack the made-up beliefs that you created. They're like, oh, Mustafa is so good at calling us out because he just destroyed this imaginary position that we have. Good job, Mustafa. You're very smart.
One more point to add on, because it's also a challenge for the audience to follow all the points. We'll give you one more,
Okay,
Daniel,
sure.
and then we'll kick it over to Harris right after.
Okay, sure. I don't want to monopolize. Sorry about that.
No worries.
But just to say about the fertility issue, you're saying that, okay, look, this is happening. It's below replacement levels in most of these Western developed countries. That means the population is going to go extinct. Like this is literally an existential threat. So you say, okay, we need to get up to 2.2. What are you going to suggest to do that?
It's not an existential threat, okay? Some places populations are lower. Don't worry, we're going to get it from other places. We're going to bring people from other places. The whole planet is not suffering from underpopulation or overpopulation. It seems like modernity is going to help us reach at an equilibrium. And also modernity is going to help us be able to feed and get more resources from this planet, hopefully with less damage to the environment as modernity comes up with better technology to get the resources. First of all, we're going to get at a stabilizing equilibrium state. Apparently, it's going to be around 10 billion if the predictions are true. Okay? So we're not going to go extinct. This is not an existential crisis. Not only we're going to manage to get an equilibrium, because of modernity, we're going to have more resources at a lower cost to the planet to be able to feed and maintain some comfort for this 10 billion people. That's where we're heading.
Kind of policies, because you have to have a policy that's not voluntary, because people are not voluntarily choosing to get married now. They're not voluntarily choosing to have families now. So what policy are you going to introduce? And that's going to limit people's individual freedom and individual choice, right? So give a suggestion.
Okay, that's very easy. I mean, let's start with the first one. You said that you want my position on colonialism, and as you said, my ancestors actually suffered at the hands of it. Now I'm wondering, which colonialism are you talking about? Arab colonialism or British colonialism?
Oh God, Harris, you just did whataboutism. I mean, it's true. It's true. Daniel is like talking about British colonialism, and he avoids the fact that Arab colonialism, like Islamic, let's not be race reductionist, essentialist. The Islamic Empire did colonialism, okay? And he wants to avoid that, or he has excuses for that. Well, he just wants to condemn the British Empire's colonialism. But Harris, this is not the good response, because this is now you doing whataboutism, okay? You should have come out and directly say that you condemn all of their crimes. And you say, like, you know what? You should have this was so easy, Harris. You should have been like, I condemn them. I condemn their crimes. And you know why I condemn their crimes, Daniel? Because I stand for human rights. That's why I condemn them. This was such an easy response, Harris. I think it was a missed opportunity here.
I'm assuming
It's very different. We can. You want me to talk and give you the difference about what?
No. Well, we know one belonged to even more primitive society, and that brought slavery and sex slavery, whereas the other one brought other kind of suffering, but that didn't include slavery. So British didn't enslave people of India. So thank you very much.
Okay, Harris. Yes, they didn't do some crimes, but they did other crimes. Just focus on condemning them. It's not that hard. Just be like, yes, they brought suffering, they brought misery, they did genocide, they brought forced famine, they did a whole bunch of crimes. They did. It's true, they did, and that's bad. Where is bad? But guys, it's bad. Genocide bad. Forced famine bad. It's not that hard to condemn these things. Just condemn them.
We know that, but yes, I'm not pro-slavery. I don't care about slavery. Yes, we condemn slavery. This was a cause of suffering of.
Look, Harry's saying we condemn slavery, but slavery was the Islamic Empire did the slavery. You said the British Empire did other bad things. Condemn those things.
Enormous amount of people, including my ancestors in India. So I don't understand why you put that on me, as though, and you make an argument that okay, they were.
See, Harris was almost saying a good thing, but he didn't finish that thought. Like, well, I don't know why you put that on me. He should be like, I don't know why you put that on human rights when human rights is against those things.
Going in the name of spreading enlightenment, the human rights. Yes, the Enlightenment started. Post-Renaissance period, and then 18th century. You could go into the industrial.
Here's a good point by Harris.
Revolution time. We could go from anywhere, but it took nearly 200 years to filter down to where we are. Even the postmodernism was actually a result of the catastrophic First and Second World War, despite of having League of Nations, despite of having some understanding of enlightenment, and despite of propagating human rights. But that was still not working. But that is our argument. These things evolve over time.
Okay, that's a great point by Harris. This is what Susanna's point as well, which she was making. Like all these. The advocacy for human rights was against all of these crimes, and during the colonialism by the British Empire and during World War I and World War II, yes, the ideas were popularized in the 1800s in Western Europe, but they weren't enforced. We didn't have that much advocacy for them. They hadn't become established. These standards were not become mandated. They were just introduced, and they were becoming more and more popular. In fact, the main advocacy for human rights, the major push that we got for it, was in response to these crimes. It was in response to the crimes committed in World War II. So it was a reaction to it. It was supposed to be pushing back against all these crimes that you're mentioning. And it's not 100% successful, but it has still been very successful. Even though we still have crimes, it has been very successful at reducing it. We actually are living at the least violent times because of the advocacy for the human rights. I've showed you the studies last time. Let me know if you want to see it again. Keep showing it every time because people don't believe me. So this is a very good point by Harris Sultan. However, I do wish, because he's saying, like, listen, human rights is only since World War II that are actually becoming more and more established and getting some bite, like getting some enforcing power, right? And we have seen the result. The results have been very positive. So he's like indirectly saying all those things that Daniel has mentioned are bad. But I wish he was more direct. I wish he would just be like Harris, was like, oh, you know what? All of those things, I condemn them. I do condemn them. And anybody who stands for human rights should also condemn them. I wish Harris was like a little bit more direct about his condemnation of those crimes.
And we are consequently getting better and better and better with each. We used to say with each 100 years, or probably a millennia back in further back we go. But now it seems like we.
Yeah, like secular saying like, yeah. Apparently human rights didn't stop all crime everywhere immediately. Checkmate secularists. Yes, guy, I'm sorry. Like our claim was as soon as we're like, hey, human rights, every wars will end. Just we're like, guys, you want to start a war? You want to do genocide? You want to torture? You want to break apart families? Have you heard of human rights? Wars end! Oh my God, we did human rights. Why didn't you tell us? Go put the guns down. Stop the waterboarding. Stop the torture. What are we doing? What have we been thinking? This human rights. Thank you, human rights advocates. You just said human rights, and we just stopped. Everything stopped. There's no more crimes. It's just rainbows and butterflies. And we were like, hey, let's hold hands and sing kumbaya. Why didn't you tell us earlier? It just takes just mentioning human rights, just stop every crime everywhere. Just it's like a spell. It's just like your weapons will just turn into flowers. And like, oh my God, somebody just came at us, yelled human rights at us, and now like our guns don't shoot anymore. Like the world just became a utopia. That's what we were advocating. That's what our claim was. And now, but look, no, Daniel's saying, look, you're advocating for human rights, but there's still crimes. Oh, so therefore you're wrong. Nothing you say works because look at that. There's still torture.
Getting better and better with each passing decade. Yes, you raised some good points about this gender change and all of that. Yes, these things.
Really, Harris? He raised some good points about gender changing? He did? You think so, Harris? Maybe we should have a talk, Harris. Like, what are you talking about? That was the most ridiculous. That was one of his most ridiculous claims. Harris saying he raised some good points about gender changing. What are you talking about, Harris? Those are all refuted. Do some fact checking.
These things are problematic. We know that. But again,
no, they're not. No, they're not problematic. It's good that people get to choose their gender. It's a good thing.
Right. But no. But that's overly simplification of human rights because that's not all human rights says. And the
part of what human rights says. A big part.
What modernism is. What modernism is.
Wait. I showed the articles of human rights, the Charter of Human Rights by the United Nations. It doesn't say any of the things that Daniel says.
Inquiry and reason, using reason to come up with better solutions. That is modernism. Now, this is we're in postmodernism, and not all postmodernism is bad either. This is you can nitpick anything, just like I nitpick your slavery and sex slavery issue, wife beating, and then you try to make excuses. Unlike you, I am honest. Well, in some cases, maybe you are honest, but you're not entirely honest yet, even though they say you are the honest one. But we'll see.
Okay, Harris makes this mistake that I do as well. Like you need to finish a thought before you jump to something else. Again, I tell him this, but I am guilty of that as well.
But I'm saying that there are some problems, and we know that these problems exist.
No, but the main problem is that you can't spread these values without total war.
No, you can, Daniel. You can. In fact, with war, these values we have shown you that with the people who want to spread these values with war, they fail. They with force or by state mandate or with war, they constantly fail. He's like, oh, this is what Daniel's trick is. Like some people have tried to spread these values by force or by war. Okay? Therefore, we human rights advocates, we think that that's the only way to spread these values. In fact, we have shown that the main, I don't know if only, okay? I'm trying not to talk in absolutes. But the examples that we have of these values spreading effectively has been without the use of force. It has been by advocacy, by activism, by convincing people out of their horrible ideas and promoting ours. It hasn't been through war. It has been so many times. Yes, Daniel, we agree. Modernity has been tried to be forced upon people by force and has failed and has backfired. We know that doesn't work. We don't advocate for that. Reza Shah tried that. Ataturk tried that. The United States tried that. The British Empire tried that. Even in British Empire, the places where it worked in places where there was just people accepting it from a bottom-up approach. The top-down approach is mandated by state. It did not work. Human rights advocacy, the examples that we've seen, like Mandela or Gandhi or Martin Luther King, or even in Western Europe, the philosophers that were spreading those ideas, they were convincing others that these are the best ideas. When it was right after the Enlightenment, when they tried to force these ideas, like, oh my God, Enlightenment is great. Let's force this upon the nation. We had the French Revolution that involved chopping heads off like they were potatoes. Like it was the most bloodiest thing ever. It was like human rights violation all over the place. Even right after the Age of Enlightenment, when the people tried to force these ideas, it became the most violations of human rights in every year. Like it was blood everywhere. They were chopping heads off left and right. As soon as anybody complained, like, maybe we shouldn't chop this many heads off. Off with your head for such a thing, like we shouldn't be chopping heads off. That's how it was. And they were like, we're the supporters of Enlightenment values. But as soon as they tried to force it, they started violating human rights. They started violating Enlightenment values. We're not for that. Why do you make it seem like that's the only way? That's not the only way. That's a horrible way. Every time that our values managed to be successfully spread was because of advocacy was because of spreading the ideas and inviting people to accept it because they're saying that it's a good way. Every time people try to force these ideas upon everybody, it's self-contradictory, because human rights allows the freedom of belief, the freedom of religion, the freedom of practice, the freedom of conscience, allows these things. So when you try to force human rights upon anybody, you're contradicting the very thing that you're trying to promote. Yeah, Mustafa agrees with me here. Yes, the French secularists. Yeah, we condemn that. Again, they try to spread the Enlightenment values by force, by violating Enlightenment values. Okay, I don't know why Muslims have it's hard for them to understand this, given that they had munafiqeen. They also understand that somebody who says like, oh, I'm a Muslim, they might be hypocrites, they might be lying, they might be like not actually Muslim. You have this concept exists within your ideology. You understand, just because somebody says that I'm a Muslim, that I accept Islam, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're Muslim. You have this in the Quran. You say that we shouldn't believe them. These are like the hypocrites, they're lying. So if you understand that concept, then how could you not understand that somebody who's chopping people's heads off for the spread of Enlightenment values, that is not actually somebody who's abiding by Enlightenment values? How do you not see that? You are familiar with that concept. Let me see. For people who don't know. Is there a Wikipedia? Am I translating this right? Right? Munafiqeens are the hypocrites in Islam. Munafiq, yes. There we go. Look at this. So this is for you, Mustafa, in the live chat, okay? Munafiq. In Islam, the munafiqun, or the hypocrites, or false Muslims, are a group described in the Quran as outward Muslims who were inwardly concealing disbelief and actively sought to undermine the Muslim community. Munafiq is a person who in public and in community shows that he is a Muslim, but rejects Islam or propagate against it either in his heart or among enemies of Islam. The hypocrisy itself is called nifaq. Okay? So, Muslims, given that you have something in Islam that you understand that somebody could be saying that they're Muslim, okay? Outwardly, they're saying they're Muslim, but actually they reject Islam and they're actually actively doing things that are against Islam. So you have this concept in your own ideology, okay? So given that it's possible for you to understand that how could somebody saying something maybe does not align with what they're doing, we have this as well, okay? We secularists and human rights advocates, we have people who say that they're on the side of human rights, but they violate human rights. Those are call them human rights munafiqeen, okay? These are our munafiqeen, the munafiqeen of our camp. We have that as well, right? So you understand?
No,
That's the whole point. So you have to say that that's necessary and that's justified. No. How are you going to get the people in Afghanistan to follow human rights?
I think I just came up with using munafiqeen today. I think I'm enjoying using Islamic concepts to teach people about our standards.
You're complaining constantly about Afghanistan. So how are those people going to accept human rights and democracy as you propose? I mean, the answer from the U.S. state is clear. They invaded and occupied for 20 years, brutal occupation. And now, even after they're gone, you have Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, saying we're going to agitate and we're going to pressure Afghanistan to start accepting LGBT rights and women's rights. And if they don't comply, we're going to, put the pressure on them. So this is all force and it leads to suffering. You stand by all that or no?
All right, Daniel, there's a difference between putting pressure. First of all, yes, United States and Afghanistan bad. Okay, 20 years of absolute disaster, and mostly disaster and really bad decisions. We don't support that. Okay, however, do not make it seem like pressuring a country to have certain values, or else you're not going to have economic relationship with them. That's not the same level of force that when you go invade them and try to have this top-down approach of you have to accept these values by force. Okay, those are not the same thing, because no country is owed your economic relationships with them. If you say like, hey, I don't want to do trade with you if you have bad values. If you have better values, I'll do trade with you. If you call this force, that's the opposite of force. Because if you think that a country shouldn't be allowed to do that, that means that every country is entitled to another country's trade relationships, regardless of their value. And the United States should be forced into having trade relationships with countries that it doesn't like, and because you say like, if they don't, then they're forcing them their certain values. No, if I decide like, hey, I don't want to have trade relationship with you, that's their right. You don't get to force them to have trade relationship with countries that don't have the values that they want. The force would be on the other way around. This is actually having more choice. Anyways, I think we spent enough time in this. Let me see actually if we could finish this thought.
Oh, answer.
I'll answer that to you, but
yes or no? You stand by it or no?
If you answer me, no, it's
Harris, just say you condemn these things. God
more
damn it.
complicated than that. But if you answer that, do you
It's not no, Harris. It's not more complicated than that. These are the things that Daniel are saying. Well, I don't understand. I want to ask Harris, why is he not just condemning them? Is he like, you know? Again, I'm a simp for modernity. I'm a simp for human rights. I'm not a simp for Western countries. Is Harris like just like simping for Western countries? Like, why is it so hard to condemn the crimes committed by Western countries? It's easy.
For Taliban or not, you said brutal occupation. You could argue about the way the war on terror was started, but after that, America was not.
No, just don't do whataboutism. Harris was like, oh my God, yes, United States did these bad things, but then it was good. Just condemn the horrible parts. Just condemn the horrible parts.
There was no Governor General of America there.
There was no America in Afghanistan?
There was no government that was
my God.
directly American. The government is
He's trying to say that United States was on average good for Afghanistan. I think is that what he's saying?
itself was Afghan. The government was Afghan. Yes, you could laugh at
Yeah,
democracy.
they're Afghan. They weren't agents of. Look at all of the leaks that were posted
say
by
it's
the Washington
brutal.
Post.
Okay, here Daniel is correct. The government that exists in Afghanistan was more a United States picking than the people's choice. Daniel is right about that. They were a puppet of the United States. It less reflected what Afghanis wanted. In fact, if Afghanis had more choice, their government would be even more Islamic than what it was.
They were
You say it's
agents.
brutal.
Afghan
You say
government
it's-
was an agent of the U.S. government. How can you deny that?
You
it's
say
I mean, I agree with this on Daniel.
it was brutal, and put a hand on your heart and say it was more brutal than the 90s Afghanistan or even now.
Yes,
what
it was more
Afghanistan is
brutal.
going to be.
Yes, I did a
It
whole
was more
video.
brutal than that.
I did a
Why?
45
Guys, it doesn't. We could compare which one was more brutal. That's not relevant. Yes, the previous government of Afghanistan, they did so many brutal stuff. They did. You know, like, oh, Taliban was more brutal, or like, no, the previous government was more brutal. They just condemned them. Like, I'm like, hey, I don't know which one was more brutal, but they were brutal, and that was bad. It was bad, guys. Like the police and the military commanders of the previous Afghan government, they have committed so many war crimes, and they were molesting children. And they were getting bribed. They were corrupt. They were committing crimes, and they were molesting children. They were doing so many bad things. You don't have to be like, well, yeah, but Taliban is worse. Just condemn it. Just condemn it. It's not that hard. God damn it.
video, all
Right.
the rape, all the
Right.
all of the rape and torture and murder. You had Australia. You're an Australian, right? So you had Australian special forces who were hunting former
Isolated
Afghan
incidents.
horses and
Iso-
cut.
Oh my God, Harris, stop. Yes, okay, fine. It was isolated incidents, but you could just this is not the time to argue the level of how bad it was. The Australian officials committed crimes in Afghanistan. It's so easy for you to just condemn it. why would you argue how bad it was relatively to the Taliban, where you could just address the fact that it was horrible and it was bad, it was illegal, and it violated human rights? Why is this so difficult? Why do so many ex-Muslims assume that fighting against Islam require us to make excuses for other crimes?
Off their
incidents.
fingers. No, this is a pattern of abuse.
They were punished.
They stopped.
They were punished.
Why were
Like, okay, yes, they were punished, and you could say relatively compared, and unlike the Taliban, Australia's government holds them accountable and blah blah blah, and there was a backlash. You could make those points, but the point right now that you need to make is that you stand against them. That as a defender of human rights, you could see that those are horrible crimes. Why is this the time for? This is not the time for you to make an argument for how bad they were, because they were bad. That's the point that you should make.
They even
punished.
there?
They
You
were-
just said that
no,
there was
but-
no
but
presence.
they were-
Now you're saying they
no,
were
no,
punished or isolated. So there were soldiers
They were-
there, right? So why are you
because
changing your story?
No, I'm not changing my story. What
You
I'm
said that
saying,
there
what-
weren't
what I'm
anyone. There
comparing-
was no forces in Afghanistan.
I'm
right?
saying no.
So
I
there-
didn't say
there
that.
was-
I
All
said
right,
the
well,
government. I
let's
said
just
the
adjust
government.
it so there's
I
not
said
too
the
much
government was
overlap.
Afghanistan. I said
So-
the government was Afghanistan. The government was given back to Afghan people, and it
Just
was,
with
it
all
was an
these
attempt at
occupying
democracy.
soldiers.
Unfortunately, Islam got in the way, and it said, "No, sorry, we want to."
No, Harris, it's not okay. See, again, another problem with ex-Muslims is that they want to make it seem like everything. I know Harris is not saying that, but it comes across as making it seem like that everything bad happens is because of Islam, or it's mostly because of Islam. Okay, you don't have to make that point. It's not true. Horrible things happen that is nothing to do with Islam. There are many war crimes, many human rights violations that happen that is not because of Islam. Even in Afghanistan, there are many human rights violations that happen that wasn't because of Islam. So you don't have to be like an Islamic reductionist, like Islam guilt reductionist. I don't know. I had to come up with a better term for that. You don't have to make it seem like it's just Islam. We're like, yeah, we condemn Islam because we condemn all of these things.
Live in 7th century, and we want to be ruled by warlords, terror, intimidation, and fear, and executions, and barbarity.
God.
And democracy has no place in Afghanistan. You should be, everyone else, every sane person, not you. That would be unexpected expectation from you. Not everyone would be happy in Afghanistan. We've seen the footages of people trying to escape Afghanistan. Why? Because
So Kella is saying the Australians are investigating the alleged crimes, and the perpetrators will be brought to justice. Yes, I know that. I know that's the difference between Australia and these other countries, but I don't think it's the right time to make this point when somebody brings that up. Okay? Even if it's true, I think the main thing you need to be highlighting at a point in time, like, what about Australia, is like, what has this got to do with human rights? Yes, these are bad. And these are bad because what has this got to do with, like, you think that we support it? What has this got to do with our advocacy for human rights? We're not at the same camp. I mean, I shouldn't say what does this got to do, because it has got to do with human rights. But I'm just saying, what does this got to do with us, advocates of human rights? This is not what we support. That's the main thing you should be highlighting. That the Australians that have done these crimes in Afghanistan, we're against them because they are violators of human rights. That's a key thing you need to be, because if you go over like, well, in Australia they're being held responsible. It seems like, okay, you have double standards. It seems like you're not consistently condemning human rights violation. Everything something un-Islamic happens that is a violation of human rights, you're looking for excuses, and every time there's an Islamic violation of human rights, you're like, oh, that's maximally bad, and these things are, it wasn't that bad. That's not what you want to portray.
burger sales have gone through the roof in Afghanistan. People are scared. Women came out and women were beaten up. Just yesterday, there was a news story.
People are trying to escape El Salvador and Mexico. People are trying to escape all of these countries.
Let's let Harris finish this point. I promise we'll come right back to you. Harris, if you want to make this last point, and then we'll kick it back over.
I didn't, yeah, because Daniel made all these points. So anyway, so yeah, people are escaping those. Yes, I know if America says that everyone at the Lahore or Mumbai airport goes there, will go there. But no, we know that for a fact that they leave for different reasons. People are scared in Afghanistan for good reasons, because we know.
Okay, Harris makes it seem like everybody who wants to leave Afghanistan is because of the Taliban being brutal and all, and that's not true. Many people want to leave Afghanistan because of the economic conditions. It's not because the people at the airport that were trying to leave Afghanistan. It wasn't just because the Taliban was taking over. They always wanted to leave. A lot of them always wanted to leave Afghanistan, and I thought that this was the only opportunity that they get because the airport was in chaos. Like, I know a lot of people were assuming, like, oh my God, Taliban is taking over. That's why these people are trying to get out. Guys, there's I don't know. There are millions of people in Afghanistan that want to leave Afghanistan, whether Taliban is in power or not in power. Of course, they want to leave Afghanistan. The economic conditions there are less. You know, they have way less opportunity to have a prosperous life in Afghanistan compared to other places. I would guess that the vast majority of the people in the airport, when they were trying to get out of Kabul, when the Taliban was taking over, if they thought there was a window for them to get out, even before the Taliban take over, they would have taken it. It wasn't because I don't think most people in that airport were assuming that Taliban is just going to tomorrow come shoot them down. I don't think that's what they were assuming. I don't think most people assume that that's what Taliban is just going to like be in the streets and just randomly shooting at people. I don't think that was the assumption they were going with.
What Taliban have done. You said something about how would you we will go towards extinction, and how would you increase the fertility rate, and you offered a solution that you can only impose these policies by war. Like, I mean, you literally want to beat people up and invade a country and tell them to have sex and make more babies.
No, that's not what I said.
So what did you say?
Again, Harris, like, don't put words in other people's mouths.
Hey, so I want to understand. I'm strong.
Islam has these policies, right? In the Sharia, you can't have premarital sex. You can't have extramarital sex. You have modesty. You have gender separation. You encourage Muslims to marry young and have children and be fertile. Those are all policies within the Sharia that, when people abide by them, there is higher fertility. You have stronger families. You have healthier societies because of that. That was the argument.
Citation needed.
It's not going to war.
No, but you implied that. How you asked me a question? How am I going to apply that in the Western world where fertility rates are falling? So you didn't say that.
What policy are
immigration, Daniel? Immigration. It would be better. It's a win-win-win. Okay, it's a win for the receiving country that is having lower fertility rates. It's a win for the country that is sending, because a lot of the income will come back to the country, and it's a win for the people who are migrating. Okay, the solution is migration. Win for everyone. And it's a fourth win. It's a win for the planet as well. Okay?
Are you going to institute?
Because it's a win for the planet, because you are not going to rely on increasing fertility rates, even in developed countries, and getting the population of the whole planet to a place where the planet cannot sustain. So it's a win-win-win. So it's a win for the receiving country. It's a win for the sending country. It's a win for the migrants, and it's a win for the planet. Migration. The only thing that is stopping us from the solution is pre-xenophobia.
That will increase fertility rate.
Well, first of all, immigration is the one good policy.
There we go. Yay! Harris is like immigration. Thank you, Harris.
Policy, and we can always
bringing in Muslims from other countries.
Like, see, Daniel is like bringing Muslims from other countries. Like, oh, you got us, Daniel. So the answer is more Muslims. Daniel, you think like this because you're a collectivist. Okay. You're a collectivist. If you think it's team Muslim versus team human rights, you don't understand that team human rights, it's also team Muslim, because Muslims are humans. And yes, we want prosperity for all humans, including Muslims. This is not team Muslim versus team human rights. We want Muslims to be able to migrate. We want them to be able to choose where they can live. We want them to become more prosperous. Yes, we are team human. We are on the side of human rights. We want them to be able to migrate to where they want to go and where they want to live. And we think they will have better lives. And we think the receiving countries will become better for it, because if they have good filters and and they could make it assimilation a lot more easier for them, and also enforce the laws in a way so that these new values, some of them who bring these values, do not, these values does not it's with the understanding that certain values in these countries need to be abide by. If you could get the process of migration again, if we didn't have so much xenophobia, this whole process of accepting and assimilating the migrants into these new societies would be easier. And guess what? Part of my guilty pleasure, again, this is not the main reason why I support all of this, but one guilty pleasure I get for accepting migrants from Islamic countries, again, he makes it seem like migration just means people going from Muslim countries to non-Muslim countries. Migration means from everywhere. Migration means from Islamic countries, or from African countries, from Asian countries, East Asian countries, okay? It's all of them, okay? But yes, including Islamic countries, and one guilty pleasure I get from getting people from Islamic countries is that we have more access to them, and they're more likely to become ex-Muslim, given that they're leaving Islamic countries and coming into more modernized countries, right? It's going to get the process of fighting Islam and making more Muslims leave their religion easier once they're in their backyard and we have access to it. When you come to our backyard, Daniel, we have access to your kids. And guess what? Be afraid, because we are coming for your kids. And you can make more babies, but once your babies grow old enough to get access to social media, they're not going to remain Muslim. Oh, yeah, you're going to bring more Muslims to how? So bring more Muslim in? Muslims for how long, Daniel? Muslims for how long?
Well, there are a lot of Indian and Chinese too, so I would prefer them first. But no, Muslims are
so that
fine.
means that
Muslims
the people here are going to go
people.
extinct.
Muslims are good people. No, that's not even the case. I mean, for example, Australia pumped up the fertility rate back in early 2010s by giving out baby bonuses. So you get $10,000 check if you make more babies. So
that's not a good solution. Those are only solutions for a population of people that just has a fear of foreigners. Okay, you don't need to waste your money. Why would a country waste taxpayer money to promote people to have more babies, where it could actually save money by bringing in immigrants that will work and have to pay taxes? So why would you come up with the solution that the government has to spend money to get people to make more babies, where you could bring working people that now work and give the government tax money? So instead of spending money, you get more money. Why would you do that? Just bring in more migrants. And it's so perfect. Just see what you need. You could be very selective with your migrants. You're like, apparently we need more nurses and more electrical engineers. Okay. Oh, let's get it from the whole planet. Okay, we're needing nurses. We need 20,000 nurses, 50,000 electrical engineers. I don't know. 40. It's so perfect. You open the gate and you open it selectively to exactly what you need. It's such a perfect solution.
So your policy of immigration relies on Islam, right? You haven't given a policy because it's Islam's higher fertility, or Chinese, or any of these traditional societies. Yeah, you're relying on Islam. So you've just deferred the argument. You haven't introduced a policy that will increase the population, the fertility in the indigenous population. So you haven't really introduced the problem that you're having is you can't introduce any policy because it will restrict individual freedom. That's why you're stuck.
Okay, so again, let me go back to Pew again.
We restrict individual freedom. We do restrict individual freedom, Daniel. I showed you that human rights doesn't mean maximum individual freedom with no limitations. You're full of crap.
Let me go back to Pew again, because as I said, it's got nothing to do with actually not wanting to make families or whatever. It might have some part to do with it, but it's got more to do with the improving economic standards. And that's why I said
I can see that.
Birth rates are also going down.
I can see that.
Birth rates are also going down.
Yes, I can see it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. It shows exactly why development and modernization and human rights is a bad thing. That's my entire point.
So let's stop going to work. Let's stop making money. That's your solution, so we can just stay home and make more babies.
No, that's not.
It is just.
So Daniel doesn't understand that this is a function not of human rights advocacy. All these trends are happening because it's a function of prosperity and economic development. When a country becomes more prosperous, this is the result that you get. It's not because. So again, guys, repeat after me. Correlation is not causation, okay? Again, this is what Daniel does. These countries are becoming more economic prosperous, okay? And as a result of economic prosperity, two independent things are happening. One, when you have more economic prosperity, given that the relative economic power of an individual, of a citizen relative to the state is becoming higher, the individual as a citizen is going to be more demanding of what the state is providing. Therefore, human rights advocacy will increase in a country where it has more economic prosperity. On average, not all, okay? So you get economic prosperity, you get more human rights advocacy. Okay. At the same time, economic prosperity, okay, increasing economic prosperity in the country will result in people being more free to make more choices about their lives, including when and how they want to have a family or children. Okay. Therefore, fertility rates drop given the economic conditions. Given that the economic power of women is increasing, they might have different decisions for their lives. We want to have less kids or no kids, okay? So this will happen in countries where there's more economic development. Fertility rates will drop, including in Islamic countries, okay? Not in Islamic countries where there's more economic prosperity, fertility rates drop, okay? So these are two different things that are not causing each other. There's an external factor that is causing them, and that's why they're correlated. Just because when human rights is in countries where human rights advocacy is higher, fertility rates are lower, it doesn't mean that the human rights advocacy is causing the lower fertility rates. They're both functions of this third external factor that is causing them independently. And that's why they're correlated. But you can see that correlation does not mean causation. Do you guys understand? Does that simple enough for you? Do you guys understand what I'm saying?
It is just one of this. It is just one of the side effects of that, and humanity will come up with a better solution. Who knows what humanity 2.0 might be like? Who knows? We might be actually making babies in labs, or maybe we might not even need to keep increasing our humanity because we would be living 1,000 years longer. So we don't know that. These are the problems that will come even later, and we'll come up with newer solutions, and we would have more solutions.
If we
don't need solutions to this. This is good thing. Dropping fertility rates for a long time in history. Analysts were looking at the population growth and they were like, holy crap, this is going to destroy the entire planet. We're not going to have enough room and resources for all these people. And then we realized that population doesn't grow like this. Population grows like this. The graph it's not linear. Okay. It grows and then it flattens. And you're like, oh my God, thank God that we thank Iblis. That is not growing like this, it's growing like this, right? The growth rate decreases. So this is not a problem. This is a good thing, or else we're not going to be able to sustain the whole population. It's going to cause a problem in those specific countries with lower fertility rates, but as a whole for the planet, we're lucky that this is what happens, or else, yeah.
I understand that because we will survive. Of course, we're not going anywhere. The birth rate is still going up everywhere else.
No, you just said it's not going up. You said it's going down.
He said everywhere else, Daniel. You're not paying attention.
Global birth rate is still going up.
Yeah, so Daniel, in some countries, birth rate is a problem because it's too low, and in other countries, it's a problem because it's too high. How is this a hard concept for you to understand, Daniel?
You said it's going down.
Daniel, it's going down in some countries. But in some countries, it's going up. It's too high.
2060. I said 2060.
No, it's not going up. It's too high. It's dropping everywhere.
In my opening statement, I said
it's dropping everywhere because everywhere the economy is growing. It's dropping everywhere, but in some countries, it's still too high.
2060, it will start falling down even for Muslims as well. And by the end of the century, it would hit a critical mass of 10 billion, and then it will start going down.
Your stats are all wrong.
No, it's not wrong. He's right. Harris is right.
Rates are going down. They're going down consistently, even in the Muslim world.
So they are going down even in the Muslim world, but they're too high in less prosperous countries. It's true that they're going down, but it's also true these are not mutually exclusive. There's no contradiction between saying they're too high, but they're getting less even in less developed countries. It's possible for some birth rates to be very high, but also dropping. Okay. Also, didn't Daniel just admit that they're also dropping in Muslim countries? Well, why, Daniel? Why are they also driving in Muslim countries? Is it because Islam is not going to be able to stop this trend? That every country, when they have more economic prosperity, birth rates will lower, even if they're Islamic? So isn't Daniel just admitting that right now? Hold on.
The fertility.
By the end of the century, it would
hit. Guys, am I mishearing this? Didn't he just admit that?
Critical mass of 10 billion, and then we'll start going down.
Your stats are all wrong. The birth rates are going down. They're going down consistently, even in the Muslim world.
Even in the Muslim world, it's almost as if Islam is not going to be able to stop lower fertility rates. And it's almost as if this is a train that you can't just stand in front of and think that you could just stop it.
World of fertility is going down.
Hey, Daniel, it's almost as if modernity is a force that Islam cannot stop. It's almost as if we're coming for you and you will submit to modernity, including Islamic countries. Submit to modernity, not Allah. Guys, submit to modernity. You don't even have to submit because you will have no choice. You will all submit to modernity, not Allah.
It's a bad thing, right? And by 2060, what you actually cite.
And Daniel just approved of what I just said. Daniel just said that fertility is dropping even in Muslim countries, which means that we're winning, modernity is winning, and Islam is a pathetic, irrelevant force that will be completely removed from the equation, okay? Nothing can stop modernity.
Was that Muslims, I didn't even remember what you cited, but all of the fertility rates are going down consistently across the world, and it's because of human rights modernization. Islam is saying that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, again, Daniel agrees with me. It's because of modernization, even in Islamic countries. We're winning. We're winning, boys. We got them. We're getting them. There you go. We are on the winning team. So good job. Good job, guys. Team Modernity. Team Modernity is winning even in Islamic countries.
Family is important. That's why you have to restrict individual autonomy with these kinds of rules I mentioned in the Sharia. And that's for the benefit of humanity because you're not going to go extinct. You're not going to.
Nobody's going extinct, Daniel. We're lower populations doesn't mean we're going extinct. The humanity will survive. Don't worry. We're going to just, in fact, it would be, these people think you either have extinction or constant baby making by everybody until the planet cannot sustain the population. Like, what do you not think that there's a middle ground, Daniel? Who talks about extinction? Like, no, our fertility are going to drop so that we reach an equilibrium. That's a good thing. We're not going to go extinct, Daniel. We're not going to go extinct just because women are making decisions to have this baby, Daniel. That's not going to happen. Don't worry. Okay, it's going to be okay, Daniel. Don't worry. Okay, it's good. It's actually better. It means more resources around. There's going to be more resources for more of us. Okay, this is a good thing, Daniel. Just admit it. Just submit to modernity.
So what should we have?
Replace.
Yeah. Team Modernity. Team Modernity is winning.
Levels fertility, and you can't.
So Daniel, what should we have?
You can't show me how human rights. Sure, yeah, that's what we should have.
No. But what's the ideal? What's the ideal number for the planet we should have? Like 10 billion.
All right, I'm gonna end this here. Okay, I'm gonna end this here because I need to go. But let's remember that we finish at the 1 hour 50-minute mark, and we get back to this later. We almost 2 hours. I was supposed to do only 2 hours. Okay. Anyways, guys, make sure you like this video right now. Do it. If you haven't, what's wrong with you? I did just 2 hours, 2.5 hour live stream with you guys, and you guys enjoyed. You know you enjoyed it. So you might as well just I did 2.5 hours for you. You might as well do half a second to like the video. If you like the video, it means you accept modernity. If you don't like modernity, dislike the video. Okay. If you don't like modernity, dislike, okay? Secular Rarity saying, great stream. I love this breakdown. Oh, thank you, Secular Rarity. I appreciate that. Brad saying black. Yeah, you're right. This is black-white fallacy. Literally, his shtick is what bases all this debate. Yeah, I mean, it's not all of his. I think saying all of his fallacies is black and white fallacy is itself a black and white fallacy. I'm not sure. But I think he makes other mistakes, not just the black and white fallacy. Okay, so Mustafa disliked the video. So thank you so much, Mustafa, for the extra engagement on the video. Guys, if you don't like the video, make sure you dislike the video. Okay, that also helps a lot. So thank you for that. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon. And Iblis be with you. Iblis bless all of you. Okay, bye.